Chapter 235. Jia Ji looked at Nian Bing somewhat angrily. I'm already a person who's about to enter the coffin, and you're still deliberately angering me. Don't tell me you think I'm not dying fast enough? Although Nian Bing's appearance made him very angry, he faintly felt that his only disciple wasn't like what she was showing now. Nian Bing slightly hugged Jia Ji's shoulder and said, "All right, master, now that we finally meet again, I'm afraid you won't be able to die even if you want to. With your disciple here, how can she let you die?" Jia Ji was stunned and his heart was filled with joy, but very quickly he frowned. "What do you mean? Are you still trying to anger me? I'm the clearest about what I'm like now. Your master's wife has also carefully examined my body. Although she didn't say anything, I can see that her judgment is the same as mine. You know your master's wife's level of magic best. Since she thinks so, could it be that I can still be saved? You stinking brat, if you continue to tease me, I'll and Nian Bing grabbed the hand that was pointing at her, her eyes revealing genuine emotions. Master, you've practically sacrificed your entire life for your culinary skills. Now that you're already old, it's time for you to enjoy life. The heavens won't take away your life. Even if the heavens really want you to die, they'll have to step over my dead body. Master's wife can't save you, but that doesn't mean I can't. Although we're both magicians, our abilities are completely different. Master, don't worry, as long as I'm still breathing, I'll definitely give you a new lease of life. When we reach Ice Moon Lake, before we set off, I'll first help you solve this important problem." Jia Ji stared blankly at Nian Bing, feeling the determination in her words. At this moment, he finally understood that the reason why Nian Bing had always been smiling was because she had a way to save him. A warm feeling rose in his heart as he looked at his disciple, speechless. Nian Bing turned her head to look at Bing Jie, who was talking to her parents not far behind them. She whispered to Jia Ji, "Master, do you want to give birth to a junior brother for me?" Jia Ji was stunned, and his old face immediately turned red. He said unhappily, "What are you saying, you stinking brat? You are becoming more and more improper." Nian Bing said in a low voice, "Master, don't be shy. I'm telling the truth." Jia Ji sneaked a glance at Bing Jie behind him and said in a low voice, "You little brat, you really hit the nail on the head. I'm already very satisfied to have a disciple like you in this life. My only regret is that I don't have any descendants. I'm not afraid of you laughing at me, but even now, your master is still a virgin. Although I'm not in good health, I can still hold up the sky occasionally in the morning. But with my current physical condition, can I still do it?" Nian Bing chuckled softly and said, "There's nothing that's impossible. Master, just wait and see what your disciple is capable of. You raised me for 8 years and taught me for 8 years. Now, it's time for this disciple to repay you. One night, just one night. Tomorrow, I'll let you have a new lease of life and show off your masculinity. How is it? Your disciple isn't bad, right?" Fortunately, Jia Ji was old and his face was wrinkled a lot, so there wasn't much redness on his face. He really wanted to find a hole to hide in, but unfortunately, they were in the air. However, Nian Bing's words struck a chord in his heart. How he wished he could truly be together with the woman he loved. Back then, when he first got together with Bing Jie, he had always been very respectful towards her. Although there had been opportunities, he had always been courteous to her. Therefore, he and Bing Jie were still virgins. This was also the reason why the Ice Goddess Priestess had chosen Bing Jie to inherit her ability. At this time, although he didn't dare to believe what Nian Bing said, how could he not hope that it was all true? His eyes were filled with hope as he looked at his disciple, revealing a trace of gratitude. Nian Bing held her master's hand tightly, the smile on her face disappearing. She said in a low voice, "Master, as long as you can be happy, this disciple will be satisfied. Don't worry, there are many kinds of magic. What's more, what I have now is not as simple as magic. I have already thought of a way. I have a 90% chance of success. At the very least, I can help you extend your life by 10 years. Jia Ji looked deeply at Nian Bing and suddenly said, "Stinking brat, are you harming yourself by helping me like this? If there was, then forget it. Master is already old, but you are still young." Seeing the concern in Jia Ji's eyes, Nian Bing smiled and shook her head, saying, "Master, don't worry, this won't harm me. Perhaps you don't know, but I also died once, but I still came back to life. Don't worry, I have confidence in this. After I help you recover your body, we will embark on the journey. I promise you, as long as I am alive, I will definitely protect Master's wife." Jia Ji's eyes became warm. 10 years is enough. To be able to enjoy 10 years of time, to me, God is already the greatest gift. Nian Bing interrupted Jia Ji's words, saying, "Master, in fact, you still have a wish, and this wish is also what you want to fulfill the most, but this disciple has been unable to help you fulfill it." Jia Ji nodded, saying, "You are talking about the god of cookery competition, right? Don't worry, I have confidence in you. How can a disciple taught by the ghost chef be bad? You will always get what you deserve. However, I heard that the new god of cookery is also very strong. You have to continue to work hard." A glint flashed across Nian Bing's eyes. "Master, your wish isn't just for me to become the champion of the god of cookery tournament. At the same time, you want me to reach the pinnacle of culinary skills. Don't worry. Once I'm done here, I'll definitely fulfill your wish." When the afterglow of the setting sun slowly disappeared from the west, everyone finally returned to the lakeside of the frozen moon lake. The remaining light of the setting sun added a touch of crimson sunset glow to the sky, reflecting the sparkling water below. It was indescribably moving. Bing Ling's eyes revealed a trace of hazy brilliance. "It's really beautiful, Nian Bing. Did you guys do all this?" Nian Bing smiled. "This is not my work. Most of it is the result of the efforts of the magic experts of the Ice God Tower and Brother Halogen. After these days of continuous reclamation, with the frozen moon lake as the center, we now have a large piece of farmland, enough for the army here to eat. When the farmland gradually expands, we will be able to develop the lost continent on a larger scale. I think, this continent once had its glory, there will be no lack of various minerals that we need. Perhaps in 10 years, perhaps in 100 years, as long as we solve the problem of the gods, this continent will definitely prosper, I believe this." Seeing the confidence in his son's eyes, Rong Tian smiled. "Nian Bing, do you know? Before I met your mother, I also had many lofty dreams and ambitions. I wanted to become the Rong family's best magician. I wanted to lead the army to unify the continent. Although I did not achieve anything, I did not regret it, because I received the most precious thing, which is your mother's love. This is already enough for me, and now, my hopes from that year have been realized by you. Father did not do anything, but I will always be proud of you. I firmly believe we will definitely be able to stop the invasion of the gods. We will definitely be here to help the lost continent rebuild its civilization and create a new glory." Bing Jie walked to Nian Bing and Jia Ji's side, and asked Jia Ji in a low voice, "What were you two talking about just now?" Looking at Bing Jie's almost beautiful face and almost perfect body, and thinking about what Nian Bing said before, Jia Ji's originally despairing heart could not help but burn with passion. Nian Bing smiled slightly and said, "Teacher's wife, wait for tomorrow morning, I will definitely give you a surprise. Now that everyone is here, I will first arrange for the departure, then I will have a good talk with teacher." After saying that, he first arranged a place for his parents, Jia Ji and his wife to stay, then immediately found Luo Ro and Mu Jing, and had them lead the army to start moving. The spatial magic formation had already been built before Nian Bing's 3 days of cultivation. Now it was only lacking the input of magic power. He told Mu Jing and Luo Ro to first meet with the Dragon King. He would go there early tomorrow morning. Mu Jing and Luo Ro went to prepare the army to advance towards the spatial magic formation built by Nian Bing, while Nian Bing went to Prince Rong's stone house by herself. The Huarong Empire's army had already arrived. Prince Rong's identity was naturally not something that Mu Jing and Luo Ro could compare to her own grandfather. Nian Bing could only invite him. Furthermore, now that her father had returned, it was time to speak up for them. Just now, when Rong Tian was talking about his pride for his son, his eyes clearly showed a trace of regret. Nian Bing clearly knew what that was. Although he did not say anything at that time, how could he not help his father fulfill his greatest wish? After lightly knocking on the door a few times, Prince Rong's voice came from inside the house. "Who is it?" "Grandfather, it's me, Nian Bing," said Nian Bing respectfully. Her grandfather's voice sounded very calm, but it was still so deep. "Have you been recently?" Nian Bing pushed open the door and entered. As soon as she entered, she saw that the house was filled with Rong family members, including Prince Rong's two younger brothers, her uncle Rong Yu, and her older brother Rong Bing. Most of them already knew about Nian Bing, but when they saw him face to face, they could not help but be surprised. Only Rong Yu, Rong Bing, and Nian Bing revealed a warm smile. "Grandfather." Nian Bing walked up and bowed to her grandfather. She did not even look at her two granduncles. Prince Rong nodded and said, "It's time to set off, right?" Nian Bing nodded and said, "Yes, it's about time. The sooner we get there, the better the situation will be." Prince Rong said, "I've already made preparations on my side. When we get there, we'll naturally make the arrangements. This time, the elites of our Rong family are all here, a total of 11-23 fire mages and 2 elite knight squads. As for the ordinary soldiers, I've only selected the most elite ones. The rest will be left there to continue the reclamation." Nian Bing naturally understood Prince Rong's meaning. In a battle of this level, even the elite soldiers could only become cannon fodder, let alone ordinary soldiers. Prince Rong continued, "I've already prepared the manpower on my side. When we get there, you can just send someone to inform me of the arrangements. Don't worry, this time we're facing a common enemy. The Frozen Moon Empire, Longmu Empire, and Alland Empire are only our allies, not our enemies." Prince Rong's words were equivalent to giving Nian Bing a reassurance pill, causing the last of her worries to disappear. She smiled and said, "All right, let's set off now. I've already prepared the spatial magic array." Prince Rong glanced at his grandson and said, "Can that magic formation of yours support the transmigration of so many people? I'm afraid the load will be very heavy." Nian Bing smiled faintly. Although his gaze was calm, his body exuded great confidence. "Grandfather, don't worry. This two-way spatial magic array can automatically absorb the spatial magic elements in the air. No matter how many people pass through, there won't be any problems. Moreover, I've also set up a protective magic array. Even the weakest ordinary person won't be affected during the transmigration process." When these words were spoken, everyone present was shocked. Although Nian Bing spoke casually, most of the people present were the most outstanding mages in the Yangon continent. How could they not understand the difficulty of such a task? Just the two-way, long-distance teleportation magic array was already a lost invention. Furthermore, Nian Bing could also supplement the magic array with other magic arrays to strengthen the overall stability of the magic array. Furthermore, it had the ability to absorb spatial magic elements on its own. None of the mages present were able to achieve all of these. Even Prince Rong couldn't do it. They naturally understood the importance of magic arrays to mages. At this moment, they had to re-evaluate Nian Bing's strength. Feeling everyone's shocked gaze, Nian Bing couldn't help but feel proud. What he wanted to express to everyone was that, as a descendant of the Rong family, he definitely didn't lose face for the Rong family. "Grandfather, there's one more thing I want to report to you." Nian Bing seemed to have the intention of not giving up until he said something shocking. His words once again attracted the attention of the experts of the Rong family. Prince Rong looked at Nian Bing in surprise and said, "There's one more thing." "What is it?" Nian Bing hesitated for a moment, but his eyes soon became clear. My father came back with my mother. They are now at the frozen moon lake. If his explanation of magic arrays had surprised the experts of the Rong family, then this sentence now made all of them explode. For a moment, complicated and angry discussions sounded in this huge stone house. Although they had silently acknowledged Nian Bing's identity, Rong Tian was different. When Rong Tian left, he was accused of being a traitor. Moreover, at that time, he took away the Stone of Fire, the family heirloom of the Rong family. No one in the Rong family could forget this. At this moment, the experts of the Rong family who thought Rong Tian was dead suddenly heard that Rong Tian had come back. How could they not be surprised? Nian Bing calmly glanced around at the experts of the Rong family whose faces had all darkened. He didn't say anything. Facing these people, he only felt disdain in his heart. He dared to say this in front of everyone, so he wasn't afraid of anything. Even if all the members of the Rong family wanted to go against his father, he was confident that he would take responsibility and never let his father suffer any harm. Besides, the one in charge of the Rong family now was Prince Rong after all. Feeling his father's affection for him, he knew that as a father, Prince Rong couldn't be cruel to his son. He also knew that when Prince Rong approved of him, he didn't hate his father anymore. Therefore, he fixed his calm eyes on his grandpa. In this Rong family, only his grandpa could make the decision. When the two younger brothers beside Prince Rong were about to say something, he raised his hand to stop them. His two powerful eyes swept over the crowd, and instantly, the experts of the Rong family quieted down. No one dared to defy Prince Rong's dignity, not even his younger brothers, let alone the younger generation. Prince Rong's eyes were filled with emotions. He looked at Nian Bing and said, "He's back?" "No, they're back." Nian Bing nodded firmly and said, "Yes, they're back. Grandpa, I want to hear your answer." Prince Rong certainly knew what Nian Bing wanted. Nian Bing could see it. Nian Bing's grandfather slightly trembled. Although this was only a small detail, it made Nian Bing even more sure of her idea. Come back. How can the descendants of the Rong family be stranded outside? Tell Rong Tian to come back before the Rong family's army departs. Rong Yu. Yes. Rong Yu hurriedly stood up from the seat next to his father. The excitement in his eyes was much stronger than Prince Rong's. Nian Bing and Rong Bing had a good relationship, so how could he have a bad relationship with his younger brother? They were brothers from the same father. Twins had a telepathic connection. When Nian Bing said that she had something to tell Prince Rong, he had already guessed it. He couldn't wait to see his younger brother. Prince Rong took a deep breath and said, "Rong Tian left home that year and took the divine Stone of Fire with him. This is an unforgivable crime. However, the current situation is tense, and the Rong family can't be in chaos. Therefore, Rong Tian is allowed to return to the Rong family and atone for his crime." "Big brother, you can't." Prince Rong's second brother rushed to say, "Big brother, Rong Tian committed a grave crime. How can you let him return to the family like this? Moreover, he took the family's divine Stone of Fire. According to the family rules, he should." "Should what?" "The divine Stone of Fire is here." A cold light flashed through Nian Bing's eyes. The god of fire's roar floated out with a flash of red light and stabbed into the ground in front of him. A scorching aura spread from the blade, immediately causing the fire elemental energy in the stone house to surge. Even though the Rong family experts present had seen countless treasures, when their gazes landed on the god of fire's Stone of Fire and felt the surging fire elemental energy, greed appeared in their eyes. Nian Bing stared at her second grandfather and said indifferently, "The divine Stone of Fire has always been in my hands. Back then, it wasn't my father who took it. I was the one who stole it. If you have any problems, just come at me. I will accept all of them. If you want to punish me according to the family rules, I can accept it. However, I once heard from my grandfather that those who have made special contributions to the family can be exempted from punishment. I think all of you should know this. Of course, there is another family rule that states that although those who have made contributions can be exempted from punishment due to their mistakes, those in the family can challenge them. If they win, they can be punished. Am I right? I am willing to accept anyone's challenge at any time. Feeling the domineering aura coming from Yanbing, the direct descendants of Prince Rong's two younger brothers all stood up and glared at her. Prince Rong's second younger brother said disdainfully, "You took it? How old were you at that time? You said you have made contributions to the family? How come I didn't know about it? Could it be that you want to challenge everyone in the Rong family?" "Rong," you said from the side, "second uncle, what you said is wrong. Even if there is a challenge, it doesn't include my family. Nian Bing can be said to be my child. If he has made any mistakes, I am willing to take responsibility for him." Nian Bing looked gratefully at her eldest uncle, who looked 80% or 90% like her father, and said with a smile, "Eldest uncle, thank you. However, I don't think there is any need for that. My contributions to the family will be judged by the public. As for challenges, I am willing to accept anyone's challenge, but I am afraid that none of you will dare to challenge me." At this time, he knew that he shouldn't stir up trouble, and that it was more important to deal with the gods. However, he couldn't suppress the resentment that had accumulated in his heart for many years. He was not only standing up for his father, but also for himself. In the past, his grandfather's indifference to his father had a lot to do with these people. If it wasn't for the pressure from the family, his grandfather might not have treated his father so coldly. Prince Rong shouted angrily, "Sit down, all of you! Do you still respect me as your family leader?" Facing the majesty of the blazing Lion King, all of the Rong family members sat down. Prince Rong coldly looked at them and said, "Although Nian Bing said that to cover up for her father, there is nothing wrong with the son paying for the sins of the father. If she is willing to take the blame for her father, I agree. Nian Bing has made great contributions to the family, and her merits can offset her faults. I allow her to have the blazing divine stone. According to the rules of the family, you have the right to challenge her. However, let me warn you first, the number one expert of the Rong family is not me, but the one standing in front of you is Nian Bing. Rong Yu, go and receive Rong Tian." Yes, father. Rong Yu couldn't help but feel relieved when he saw the change in his second and third uncle's expressions. He turned around and left. The people present clearly couldn't accept this fact. None of them could believe that this little brat in front of them, who was only in his early 20s, was actually the number one expert of the Rong family. However, they couldn't doubt Prince Rong's words, because Prince Rong had never lied before. He never lied before, and he definitely wouldn't lie in the future. Therefore, they all hesitated. "Big brother, perhaps Nian Bing is the strongest, but I don't know where the merits you speak of came from." Prince Rong glanced at the dissatisfied expressions of his two younger brothers and coldly said, "This is our family's greatest secret, you don't need to know. Don't tell me you are going to doubt my words?" "No, of course we won't doubt Big Brother's words. However, he is your grandson, it's inevitable that people will." A cold light flashed through Prince Rong's eyes. Just as he was about to explode, the stone house's door opened. It wasn't Rong Yu who had brought Rong Tian back. He had just left, so how could he return so quickly? 7 people walked in from outside. The 7 old men all wore ordinary clothes, but their arrival caused everyone present to stand up. The Blood Lion's 7 elders weren't just the 7 elders of the Blood Lion cult who held the highest authority, they were also the 7 elders with the highest seniority in the Rong family. Normally, they would retire in the quietest inner courtyard of the Rong family. With their strength, it was enough to earn the most sincere respect of the Rong family. Moreover, not only was Prince Rong's father among them, but his 2 younger brothers' fathers were also among them. The 2 old men unhappily glanced at their sons and said, "Rong Yen is the head of the family. His words are orders to everyone in the family. Are you trying to rebel? You don't trust him, But don't tell me you don't trust me either. We only came here to say one thing. Nian Bing's contributions to the family are unmatched even by the Rong family's ancestors, let alone you two. Not to mention atoning for his father's sins, with his contributions, it's even possible for him to become the family's leader now. If anyone has any objections, it will be a blasphemy to the family's ancestors. Alright, you two, hurry up and prepare. Prince Rong's second and third brothers were the sons of this second elder. If they were asked who they were most afraid of in their lives, it definitely wouldn't be Prince Rong, who was always above them, but this bad-tempered father of theirs. For a moment, everyone's doubts rose to the peak, but they didn't dare to say a single word of objection. Nian Bing waved her right hand and withdrew the fire god's roar into her body. She smiled faintly and said, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for everyone here to accept me wholeheartedly. However, words need strength. We're about to face the most powerful group of people in the world. When that time comes, I'll show you what a true powerhouse is. I know that many of you are hostile towards my father and me. This is unavoidable. However, I've grown up now. Everything that happened to me when I was young will never happen again. The first elder walked to Nian Bing's side with a kind look in his eyes. He obviously knew what had happened to Nian Bing. Looking at his great-grandson, he sighed and said, All right, Nian Bing, there's no need to say so much. You still have many things to do. Go ahead. The Huarong Empire's army is about to set off. You don't have to worry about your father. Your grandfather is here. Nian Bing smiled and respectfully bowed to the 7 elders and her grandfather. Then she left. If she was in the Bloodlion cult, only the 7 elders would bow to her. However, in this place, the 7 elders were her seniors. After leaving the stone house, Nian Bing knew that with the 7 elders and her grandfather, her father wouldn't be in any trouble. She had too many things to do now. She couldn't stay there any longer. Her figure flashed a few times, and she quickly arrived at the teleportation array she had built. It was time for the array to unleash its power. When Nian Bing returned to her room, it was already late at night. The frozen moon lake was much quieter because of the departure of the 4 Empires' army. The slightly moist air blew over everything. Nian Bing's eyes revealed a faint trace of fatigue. Although the array could absorb the natural qi in the air to help so many people pass through space, it was still difficult to transport 200,000 people at once. Therefore, she had no choice but to use her spiritual power to help. At this time, the consumption of her spiritual power had already made her tired. However, she still had things to do. It was impossible for her to rest. If it wasn't for her master's sudden appearance, Nian Bing would have already appeared in front of the survivors of the lost continent like the 4 Empires' army. However, her master's body was in such a bad condition. If she didn't help Cha Ji solve the problem first, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to fight against the gods with peace of mind. Therefore, she decided to stay. Only Bing Jie stayed with her. Even Feng Nu, Lan Chun and Long Ling went to the front line. Her father had successfully returned to the Rong family. Although Nian Bing didn't see her father again, she believed that her father must be very happy. After all, his biggest wish was finally fulfilled. Although her mother was temporarily separated from her father, she was leading the experts of the Ice God Tower. All the elites of the 4 empires had already gone there. Master. Nian Bing pushed the door open and softly called. Although it was already late at night, Cha Ji didn't sleep. It wasn't that he didn't want to sleep, but that he couldn't sleep at all. Whenever he thought of his outstanding disciple, and what Nian Bing said to him during the day, his heart burned with an indescribable passion. Bing Jie had just left for a while. Cha Ji was afraid that she was too tired, so he told her to rest. After all, Bing Jie and Nian Bing had to go to the front line tomorrow. You're back. You must be tired. Rest for a while. Cha Ji smiled and patted the chair beside him. Nian Bing walked to Cha Ji's side and sat down. In front of her master, she didn't need to show any strength. She smiled and looked at Cha Ji, saying, Master, the environment here is not bad, right? In the future, if you and your wife want to live in seclusion, this is a good choice. Ice Moon City is really too cold. Chapter 236. Jia Ji smiled and said, "There's no hurry. If I can really live on, wouldn't it be the same no matter where I live? Nianbing, I see that you are too tired. You haven't been resting since you came back. Why don't you have a good rest first? We can talk about it again after you have defeated the gods." Nianbing knew that Jia Ji was worried about her. She held her master's weak but broad hand and said with a smile, "Master, I'm not tired. If I don't help you recover, how can I leave in peace? It wasn't easy for you and mistress to be reunited. For the sake of your happiness, nothing must happen to you. I'm not tired at all. Right now, your disciple is one of the strongest humans in the continent. Although I'm a little busy, there's nothing wrong with my body. Let's start. Otherwise, I'm afraid that we won't be able to finish by daybreak." Jia Ji looked at the sincere light in Nianbing's eyes and smiled. "When I was still thinking about what happened to your master's wife in Chunio, I always thought that the best thing I did in my life was to boldly woo your master's wife. Even after that incident which separated us, I still thought so. But now I realized that I did something even better, and that is to accept you as my disciple. Nianbing, your performance is too outstanding. In my eyes, you are already flawless." Nianbing smiled and said, "Master, if you continue to praise me like this, I won't be able to find my bearings. Actually, how can I be perfect? In the past 2 years, I have been busy increasing my strength and some unavoidable matters. I haven't been able to continue cultivating my culinary skills. Actually, to me, magic was only a means to save my parents. What I really like is culinary skills. I haven't been able to work hard for what I like. Perhaps this is also my sorrow. But don't worry, as long as I can come back alive from this battle, I will definitely fight with little Tian in the next God of Cookery tournament. Even if I lose, I won't let your reputation down." Jia Ji laughed and said, "No, you must win. How can my disciple lose? Actually, when I heard the description from the people in the restaurant I was in, I knew the origin of this little Tian." Nianbing was startled and said, "You know his origin? He is." Jia Ji smiled and said, "Silly boy, think about it. If you don't have an outstanding master, how can you teach such an outstanding disciple? Of course, he had a background. Do you still remember what I told you about the 5 god chefs? I've always been ranked first. Among the other 4 gods of cooking, there is actually one whose strength is only slightly weaker than mine. That was the fierce chef god, who was ranked second. Because of this ranking, he had always been brooding over it and kept practicing his cooking skills. But until the day I retired from the cooking world, he still couldn't defeat me." Nianbing furrowed her brows as she looked at her master and said, "But, I have never heard you mention the fierce chef gods Yin and Yang harmony, Tai Chi hand before. He was the #1 chef in the culinary world. Lil Tian also relied on this Taiji Yin-Yang harmony hand to be able to contend against me. No, to be precise, he was probably the god of cooking because of the Yin-Yang harmony Taiji hand. If he was the fierce chef god's disciple, with the Yin-Yang harmony and the Taiji palm, I'm afraid even the fierce chef god might not have lost to you." Jia Ji smiled slightly. "That's right. The fierce chef god really didn't know the Yin-Yang harmony Tai Chi hand. Maybe you have already guessed it. In fact, the Yin-Yang harmony Tai Chi hand didn't come from cooking, but from martial arts. That guy, Old Lai, naturally didn't know any martial arts. But it didn't mean that his disciple didn't. I don't know the real situation, but I can vaguely guess that this guy found a very talented disciple and asked a martial arts expert to teach him martial arts. Then, he gave him the Yin-Yang harmony Tai Chi hand to cultivate. Back then, when I defeated Old Lai for the last time, I heard him say that he had a magic treasure that I couldn't defeat, but it was not time to use it. Now that I think about it, the magic treasure he was talking about should be this Yin-Yang harmony Tai Chi hand. Unfortunately, he couldn't cultivate it himself, so he never used it. Now, he passed the #1 chef in the culinary world to his disciple, and his disciple got the position of god of cooking as he wished. I think he must be secretly happy. Nian Bing said, You mean to say that the fierce chef god already had the yin-yang harmony Tai Chi hand cultivation method? Chaji nodded and said, That's right. I'm almost certain that it wasn't passed down in his family, but he just happened to get the yin-yang harmony Tai Chi hand cultivation method. It was only later that he found out that only martial arts experts could cultivate this yin-yang harmony Tai Chi hand, and he was already old, so he could only entrust it to the next generation. Although Lil Tian has obtained the position of the god of cooking, before he defeats my disciple, he will never be the true god of cooking. At this point, the eyes of the once leading figure of the culinary world revealed a proud look. After all, in his era, no one could surpass him. Even Bing Jie only did so because of a trick. Master, I will definitely work hard. There are still a few years left, so I think it should be enough. Alright, we should start now. Master, let me show you something first. I think you will be very surprised. Saying so, Nian Bing took out a porcelain bottle from her space ring with a smile on her face and handed it to Cha Ji. Master, please take a sip first before we begin. After receiving the porcelain bottle, Cha Ji suddenly felt a strange impulse in his heart. After glancing at Nian Bing, he carefully pulled out the stopper on the bottle. Suddenly, a fragrance filled every corner of the room. The fragrance seemed to be changing every second, but no matter how it changed, it was still magical. Ah! This is 100-flower dew. How is this possible? How can anyone brew 100-flower dew? Cha Ji's voice trembled as the excitement in his heart reached its peak. Although he was once the most outstanding chef, there were still some things that he couldn't do, such as brewing 100-flower dew. The biggest problem in brewing 100-flower dew was that it needed to gather hundreds of rare flowers from all 4 seasons. Cha Ji had tried before, but no matter where he was in the continent, it was impossible to gather so many different flowers, let alone the flowers of all 4 seasons. Of course, ordinary flowers could be gathered, but the preciousness of the flowers themselves and the special requirements of the 4 seasons determined the quality of the 100-flower dew. It was for this reason that although Cha Ji worked hard, he had no choice but to give up in the end. However, the rich fragrance in front of him was clearly the highest quality 100-flower dew. How could he not be surprised? Nian Bing pointed to herself. Smiling, she said, Master, the one who brewed this 100-flower dew is your disciple. I spent a lot of effort to brew it. Of course, this was only possible in a special place. Today, I want to treat your body because of this special place. Please take a sip first. After that, we can begin. Cha Ji trembled as he brought the porcelain bottle to his mouth and took a small sip. Of course, he knew how precious this 100-flower dew was, so he couldn't bear to drink too much. Along with the fragrance that spread to every pore of his body, a warm aura instantly spread to every part of his body. That warm feeling made his weak body feel as comfortable as if it was glowing with youth. He couldn't help but groan. His hand trembled, and the porcelain bottle almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, Nian Bing noticed it in time and caught the porcelain bottle. The flowers used to make the 100-flower dew were all the most precious flowers. Back in Cao's life domain, these flowers were all stimulated by her enormous life aura. This 100-flower dew was the essence of these flowers, so it naturally had the purest life aura. Under the influence of this life aura, Cao's life aura became even purer. Under the influence of this life aura, Cha Ji's life force that was constantly draining was gently replenished, making him feel much more comfortable. His dim yellow eyes also became clearer. A rainbow-colored light appeared out of nowhere, and Cha Ji felt his body become lighter. He had already left the chair and landed on the bed. Under the influence of an unknown energy, he was surprised to find that he was sitting cross-legged. Nian Bing followed him to the bed and guided him to place his hands on his knees. Master, I'm about to begin. You just need to stabilize your mind and take a nap. Tomorrow morning, the sun will definitely be different. Looking at the confidence in his disciple's eyes, Cha Ji suddenly realized that what he had always thought was impossible was not difficult at all. With a faint smile on his old face, he slowly closed his eyes. As an outstanding chef, stabilizing his mind was a simple matter. The moment he closed his eyes, he could clearly feel a warm energy stronger than the 100-flower dew coming from his limbs and bones. In just a moment, that warmth had already submerged him. If there was someone in the room at this time, they would be surprised to see a green light appear on Nian Bing's chest. This light was emitting a gentle green light, and the energy filled with life aura formed a light shield that completely enveloped Cha Ji's body. Although Nian Bing still couldn't really use the energy of the life sphere and the death sphere, she could still make simple use of it. The life aura peacefully stimulated the life force in Cha Ji's body, causing his withered body to gradually emit a layer of pale yellow light. Waves of fresh life aura entered his body from every pore and began to transform his body. Nian Bing's hands gradually lit up. Her left hand was emitting a blue light, while her right hand was emitting a soft milky white light. As a magician, how difficult was it to use two types of healing magic at the same time? One must know that healing magic required much more precise control than attacking magic. Otherwise, if one was not careful, it could easily backfire. However, in the hands of Nian Bing, two types of healing magic were easily used. Under the influence of her immense spiritual force, there was no problem at all. Coupled with the baptism of life aura, she had already begun the most powerful healing. With this kind of healing magic, perhaps even a dead person could be revived. The light flashed, and Nian Bing's eyes emitted a strong light. Her hands were clasped in front of her chest. Under the control of her spiritual force, the blue and white light entered Cha Ji's body from the top of his head and the bottom of his feet. For her master, Nian Bing was not only exceptionally careful, she had also used all her strength. She didn't want her master's recovery to be delayed because of a little carelessness. The night was quiet. Bing Jie didn't listen to Cha Ji's advice to rest. With her strength, sleep was no longer important. When Nian Bing was busy, Cha Ji didn't hide anything from her and told her what Nian Bing was thinking. Although she found it hard to believe, but when she thought of the miracles that had happened to Nian Bing in the past, she couldn't help but feel a trace of hope in her heart. At this moment, Nian Bing was in the room helping Cha Ji recover. Bing Jie was waiting outside. Firstly, she wanted to protect them. Secondly, she wanted to be the first to see how much the person she loved the most could recover. Bing Jie and Cha Ji's relationship had not changed even after a few decades. Even when she saw how old Cha Ji was, she didn't feel any regret or waver. She was very clear about Cha Ji's physical condition. She only hoped that he could live for a few more days and let her serve him for a few more days. That would be enough. She didn't dare to hope that Cha Ji's body could recover. After all, as a magician, she was very clear about what it meant to lose a person's life force. However, she didn't know that Nian Bing was an anomaly. He had used his life force as the price to summon powerful magic twice. He had a deeper understanding of life force than anyone else. Furthermore, he had a huge amount of life force that ordinary people could only dream of. Time passed minute by minute. The humid air made Bing Jie's clothes more moist. However, she still stood there, not moving an inch. She prayed silently in her heart. She prayed that Nian Bing would succeed. Even if Cha Ji could live for a few more years, she would be satisfied. The night was dark. Mist filled the frozen moon lake. Because of the mist, the bright moonlight seemed a little hazy. Bing Jie looked up at the sky. After so many years, her heart became nervous again after seeing Cha Ji. When people don't have hope, they don't think too much. However, when hope comes, people's thoughts will become complicated. Right now, Bing Jie was in such a state of mind. Time passed very slowly at this moment. Because of Nian Bing's sky's eye realm, there was no breath or sound in the room. Bing Jie waited in silence. Even though she was very anxious, she didn't dare to disturb him. When the eastern sky finally revealed a touch of white, the black sky turned blue. When dawn was about to arrive, Bing Jie suddenly realized that a layer of ice crystals had formed on her clothes. It was naturally not caused by the environment. Although the weather was not hot, it had already entered the warm spring. The appearance of ice was obviously caused by the ice element magic that she unconsciously emitted. After cultivating for so many years, this was the first time that she couldn't control her magic and had such a situation. The sky was getting brighter and brighter. The sun was like an egg yolk that appeared on the blue line in the distance. The gradually brightening radiance carried the aura of light into the sky. It was a very strange feeling, as if the earth was gradually awakening under the sunlight. The sounds of insects and birds gradually became louder. Following the reclamation of the lost continent, the number of creatures attracted by the Yangon continent had gradually increased. Although most of them were just birds, it gave the continent that had lost its own civilization a bit more vitality. Silence. The door opened. The first to walk out was a tired Nian Bing. His face was calm, but his energy consumption couldn't hide his current state. His pale face made him look haggard. Seeing his expressionless face, Bing Jie's heart couldn't help but skip a beat. Ah, Master's wife. Why are you here? Nian Bing looked at Bing Jie in surprise. The current Bing Jie was no longer the cold and arrogant ice goddess priestess. She said weakly, I was worried about you guys. I helped you guard outside. Nian Bing, how is your master? Nian Bing smiled. His smile was as warm as the sun, causing Bing Jie's heart to race. Of course, she knew what that smile meant. At this time, another figure walked out of the room. That figure was only slightly shorter than Nian Bing. Every step he took was steady and steady. He was wearing an ordinary cloth robe, but he exuded a gentle aura. The moment he appeared, Nian Bing was stunned. The moment he appeared, he brought a faint fragrance to the air. Bing Jie stared blankly at the tall figure in front of her. She couldn't believe that this was real. The tall figure in front of her. Was the handsome man who looked like he was in his 30s still him? Cha Ji's eyes warmed up. Although he couldn't see his own face, he could clearly see the changes on his skin. That warm and moist skin no longer had the lifeless feeling it had before, and there were no wrinkles on it. It was as if he had been reborn. Every part of his body was emitting vitality. What kind of feeling was this? His body was light as a feather. It was as if he was in another world. The ice moon lake in front of him seemed to have become more beautiful. The surrounding farmland seemed to have become greener. Cha Ji really wanted to ask himself, was this still him? When Bing Jie first met Cha Ji, he was already in his 40s. Although he had the aura of a mature man, he was definitely not as handsome as he was now. That gentle feeling, that handsome face, that stalwart body. This was the person she loved? Bing Jie wanted to rush up and hug him. However, she couldn't confirm that all of this was real. Nian Bing smiled. He smiled happily. The tiredness on his body seemed to have disappeared. He looked at his reborn master with satisfaction. There was an indescribable joy in his heart. No matter how much he sacrificed, he wouldn't feel the slightest bit of dissatisfaction. All of this was worth it. This was a miracle that he had created. Yes, this could only be described as a miracle. Cha Ji's aged body, under the combined effects of the water element magic of the source of life, the holy and gentle light magic, as well as the incomparably abundant life qi, not only did he recover his vitality, but he also regained his youth. Now, his body was no different from that of an ordinary 30-year-old man. Moreover, he also had a huge amount of life qi. Not to mention 10 years, even if he could live for another 100 years, Cha Ji was now completely confident. Nian Bing smiled at his master's wife. Master is back. The real master is back. Master's wife, I have given you an explanation. I think that you and master will definitely live a happy life. Bing Jie stared blankly at Nian Bing. Her voice trembled as she said, He really is. Nian Bing nodded firmly and said, I personally saw master become what he is now. Master's wife, hug master. He needs your affirmation now. Little Jie, I'm back. My life is back. Now, it shouldn't be you taking care of me. It should be me taking care of you for the rest of your life. Cha Ji's voice was no longer as old as before. His deep voice carried a sense of joy that was filled with life. He took firm steps towards his beloved woman. At this moment, his heart was filled with excitement. Nian Bing smiled as he watched the two figures gradually merge. He smiled happily. The excitement in his heart was just like when his parents were first saved. This feeling was so wonderful, so moving. Nian Bing's heart trembled from this wonderful feeling. He gazed into the distance. He knew that he no longer had anything to worry about now that he had settled this matter. He was afraid that the gods would not give him any more time. Only when she hugged Cha Ji's body, which was filled with vitality, did Bing Jie confirm that all of this was real. On Cha Ji's body, other than his original aura, there was a faint fragrance. That was the effect of the 100-flower dew. He, who had obtained a new life, not only had his body returned to normal, under Nian Bing's intentional treatment, his hands and feet that had been cut off by himself were also completely healed. Now, he was a complete person. He no longer had any flaws that could be compared to others. Bing Jie cried. She cried because she was so excited. Lying in Cha Ji's arms, she cried tears of happiness. What could be happier than this moment? Cha Ji's arms that hugged her were so strong. His aura was so intimate. Everything that had happened in the past had already faded. They hugged as if they had experienced a century. When their bodies separated, there were no more tears on their faces. Holding hands, 4 pairs of eyes fell on the tired Nian Bing. The two actually bent down at the same time for Nian Bing. Qi Bing was shocked. Without any hesitation, she jumped to the side and said in a panic, Master, Mistress, what are you doing? Are you trying to shorten my lifespan? Bing Jie looked at Nian Bing with gratitude. Thank you, Nian Bing. Thank you very much. Without you, your master and I wouldn't have a future. There's something I always forgot to tell you. Actually, I always wanted Bing Yun to bring you back to the Ice God Tower. I wanted you to meet your parents, but you were like a slippery fish. I couldn't catch you no matter how hard I tried. In the end, even Bing Yun was tricked. Nian Bing looked at her in shock. It can't be. Mistress, you actually had such a plan. But I didn't trick Bing Yun. I truly love her. Bing Jie smiled and said, I don't know about that. At that time, although I couldn't go against Master's orders to release Bing Ling and her parents, I could let you two meet. All right, your master is fine now. We should set off. Nian Bing hesitated. She said, Mistress, you should stay too. Stay here and guard. It's best if we leave some people here to prevent those sly gods from sneaking over. Of course, he knew that Bing Jie's strength would be a great help to them. But his master had just recovered. How could he bear to separate them? Jia Ji smiled and said, All right, do you think I don't know what you're thinking? Just now, we bowed to you to thank you for giving us the rest of our lives. Just this point alone is enough for you to repay me for raising you. Let your master's wife accompany you. Mistress is the most important person in my life. Similarly, you are too. I hope you can come back safely together. I'm just a chef and can't help you much. But now that my tendons have recovered, I should use this time to recover my culinary skills. Master will prepare a table of delicious food for you to taste. Master, Nian Bing didn't know what to say now. Jia Ji let go of Bing Jie's hand and gently stroked her long hair. Remember, I only have one request. That is for you to come back alive. I'll wait for you. If you're no longer here, then even if I've recovered my life force, I have no reason to continue living. I think you should all understand what I mean. Under Jia Ji's reluctant farewell, Nian Bing and Bing Jie stepped into the teleportation array. A faint light flashed and their bodies disappeared at the same time. Looking at the strange magic in front of him, Jia Ji's eyes were filled with warmth. You must come back alive. I'll be waiting for you. I'll be waiting for you forever. As the light flashed, Nian Bing and Bing Jie appeared at the teleportation point that he had set up before he left. As soon as he appeared, he immediately saw an army of more than 100,000 with flags waving in the wind. There were close to 200,000 people, and they were arranged in neat formations. Almost every one of them was busy. Some were building simple offensive formations, while others were scattered around the surroundings. Although this place was a plain, there were many hills around. These hills were where the troops were arranged. Although Nian Bing didn't rush over immediately, there was a smart commander among the troops. That was the Ottoman Empire's Prime Minister Luo Ro. Even Prince Rong couldn't help but admire Luo Ro's ability to command the troop. After some discussion, he decided to temporarily let Luo Ro be in charge of the troops of the four empires. This battle was for the entire Yangon continent. It was no longer about the glory of each country, but the future of the entire human race. Whether or not they could continue to develop and survive depended on whether or not they could defeat the God's army. Therefore, it was rare for the four empires to work together as one. Even if it was a year ago, no one would believe it. However, it was true. All of this was connected by a thread. Not only did this thread connect the four empires, but it also connected their determination to fight against foreign enemies. Nian Bing was this thread. Nian Bing didn't have any doubts about Luo Ro's command. He was very clear that Luo Ro, who grew up in formal learning, not only did not lose out to him in terms of intelligence, but also in terms of command and deployment. She had abilities that he couldn't compare to. What she could do was definitely better than what he could do. So, why should he add to the trouble? Soon, Nian Bing met with the leaders of the four empires, while his master's wife, Bing Jie, went to the Ice God Tower's camp. Among the military forces of the four empires, the most elite ones were obviously the magician legions from the Ice God Tower and the Huarong Empire. Together with the magicians from the other two empires, they formed the biggest threat to the God's army. Simple tents appeared on the plains in the middle of the hills on both sides. This plain was not very wide, but was completely long and narrow. The last time Nian Bing came, he saw the last oasis that the survivors relied on for survival. Although the lake was not small, its water capacity was only 1/5 of its original. Moreover, the quality of the water was very poor. The water was muddy and looked like it came from a smelly river. However, this time, when he came here again, the lake had changed. Not only was the lake water reduced to about 1/2 of its original size, but it was also very clear. Now, the survivors were the most excited. They not only got a lot of food but also a fresh water source. For these survivors, who only wanted the right to live, there was nothing more perfect than this. When Nian Bing arrived at the central tent, the leaders of the four empires were in the midst of a heated discussion. They were giving out orders one after another. Obviously, they did not have much rest since they came here last night. Nian Bing, you came at the right time. We were just discussing countermeasures. Prince Rong waved at Nian Bing and signaled him to come forward. Nian Bing immediately saw a simple sand table in front of Prince Rong, Snow Soul, Mu Jing and Luo Ro, who represented the four empires. Although the sand table was simple, the surrounding terrain was clear. As expected of veterans of war, although this battle was going to be very difficult, their combined wisdom showed the strength of the strongest human army. Nian Bing glanced at the sand table and said, "I've already taken a look when I came here. According to the terrain here, Luo Ro has already allocated the troops very well. The hills on both sides are for surprise attacks, while the center is our strongest defense. The mages will be in this defense. When it comes to fighting, all of you are much better than me. I have no objections to the arrangement. I am only responsible for leading people to fight against the strongest god's army. Chapter 237. Prince Rong nodded and looked at Luo Ro with a strange expression. I've decided to let Luo Ro handle all military matters for this operation, including the two most elite legions of our Huarong Empire. No wonder this girl can become the prime minister of a country at such a young age. Even Su Yu admires her so much. She's never been to the front lines, but the problems she considers make even me praise Buddha. It's a pity that our Huarong Empire doesn't have such a talent. Luo Ro smiled and said, Grandpa Rong, you're too kind. I'm only a little smart. How can I compare to you, the #1 commander of the continent? A rare smile appeared on Prince Rong's face as he said, All right, you don't have to be so modest. I'm also one of the strongest on our side. If we really fight, Nian Bing and I will face the strongest gods together. I'll leave the command here to you. Although you're lacking in military matters, there shouldn't be any problems with the help of the experienced Marshal Shuepa. Shuepa naturally knew that Prince Rong was the former leader of the Blood Lion cult, so she had no objections to his decision. Mu Jing, who was standing at the side, had also been deeply impressed by Luo Ro's talent after interacting with her. As a result, no one objected to Luo Ro being the one in charge of the 4 great empires. Luo Ro smiled. This wasn't the time to be polite. Since Grandpa Rong and Marshal Shui trust me so much, I'll temporarily command the 4 empires' armies. Right now, our army has already begun to move. As she spoke, she pointed at the hills on both sides of the sand table. Here. I've sent out heavy crossbowmen to join our 4 empires' strongest long-range attack force. Perhaps they'll suffer great losses when the battle begins. However, as long as we hide well here, we'll definitely be able to deal a blow to the gods. At the same time, I've also arranged for some magicians to assist the heavy crossbowmen on both sides of the hills. The heavy crossbow she was referring to was naturally incomparable to the Godslayer crossbow developed by Nian Bing. However, the heavy crossbow mechanism that required 2 people to work together was indeed capable of dealing a certain amount of damage to ordinary gods. Luo Ro continued, In order to minimize our losses, I ordered people to open up a path from the back of the hill where the crossbowmen were. We have a large number of soldiers. The road would be opened by tonight at the latest. In that case, after launching the first wave of attack, these crossbowmen will immediately retreat. With you experts taking care of them, the losses will be minimized. Judging from the range of the crossbow bolts, these crossbowmen should have 3 chances to attack. Once their attacks are over, our experts will have to fight. In this battle, we must not fight the deities directly. Instead, we need to delay. Nian Bing found it strange. Delay? Why are you stalling? Luo Ro smiled and said, Nian Bing, tell me, what is the weakness of these gods? Nian Bing replied without thinking, It's their personality. They are arrogant but they fear death. Luo Ro nodded and then shook her head. You're right. But that's not right. Although these gods have flaws in their personalities, I am certain that the ruler of the gods is a powerful deterrent to them. Under the leadership of such a godly person, the personality flaws of the godly people would only be revealed at the last moment of the battle. In the early and most important battles, they can be completely ignored. Nian Bing thought for a while and said, What you said makes sense. For ordinary gods, the Master God can be considered the strongest existence. Moreover, it can be said that he is their God. With the Master God's deterrence and the deities being confident in their strength, they should not show any signs of cowering. Then what do you think is the weakness of these deities? Luo Ro smiled and said, Very simple, it's supplies. Supplies? Hearing this word, Nian Bing's eyes lit up. She immediately understood what Luo Ro meant. Luo Ro nodded and said, That's right, supplies. Nian Bing, do you remember that a few days ago, I deliberately looked for you to understand the situation of the godly mainland? Right now, what the godly mainland lacks the most is backup and supplies. They have no backup and no supplies at all. Although they are very strong, if they cannot take us down in one go and achieve the goal of using battle to support battle, after losing their supplies, their strength will gradually weaken. There is no food in the godly mainland, they can only eat those demon beasts. And the greatest advantage that the lost continent gave us was given to us by the deities when they destroyed the lost continent's civilization. Nian Bing and Prince Rong said 4 words at almost the same time. Clear the strong wilderness. Luo Ro smiled and nodded. That's right, that's the case. Let them taste their own sins. In this lost continent, other than the land that we have cultivated, there is no food at all. Even drinking water can only be found here. Therefore, there is no need for us to do anything. If we delay, it will be the best blow to the deity's physical and mental health. Nian Bing frowned and said, Your idea is very good. But now there are 2 problems in front of us. First, the number of gods is about 10,000, but all of them are experts. As you can imagine, they should also know that most of them carry some magical beast meat and other food with them. It is because of the lack of food that their first wave of attack will be very strong. Will we be able to stop it? The other problem is, will the deities go around us and go to the Ice Moon Lake and Yangon continent to look for food or invade? If that is the case, it will be very difficult for us to stop them. After all, the lost continent is too big, and if our people are scattered, our strength will be greatly reduced. Luo Ro smiled and said, I have thought about these 2 problems. I will answer your second question first. Although this possibility exists to us, if they really do choose to invade, it will be advantageous for us. Think about it, if the deities gather together, they will be a very strong force, but we have no lack of experts. If they scatter to the Yangon continent or our Ice Moon Lake, we can form an assassination team. We will specifically target the deities who are alone. Although this will bring disaster to the Yangon continent and our newly built Ice Moon Lake, it will be a heavier blow to the deities. It is still the same words, they do not have any reinforcements. Every time one of them dies, their strength will decrease. And we have already discussed it. For the peace of the Yangon continent, our 4 countries have already sent envoys back to their countries to gather more troops at the Ice Moon Lake. Other than the main god-level deities, if the deities want to go to the Yangon continent, they will have to go through the Ice Moon Lake. We will station a large number of troops there. Even if they can rush over, it will be delayed. When the time comes, we will kill them from behind. A pincer attack will only give us an advantage. This time, our battle with the deities will not be calculated. As long as we can kill them all, even if a large number of troops die, it will be worth it. Although she said it very calmly, everyone could hear the determination in her voice. Nian Bing looked at Luo Ro with some admiration. She simply explained that she had already resolved the possible collective attack from the gods, as well as the strategy to disperse and infiltrate the gods. This was clearly not something that she had thought of on the spur of the moment. Luo Ro must have planned it in advance for her to be able to explain it so thoroughly. The Lady of Wisdom, as expected of the Lady of Wisdom of the past. Perhaps, in terms of cleverness, she was stronger, but in terms of wisdom, she was not as comprehensive as Luo Ro. Luo Ro smiled and said, Now, let me answer your first question. Whether or not we can block the deities' attack is very important. Their first wave of attack is naturally the most ferocious. As long as we can block this wave of attack, our chances will be much higher. Otherwise, the elites of the 4 countries are gathered here. Once they are destroyed by the deities, then there will be no force behind us that can stop them. Therefore, in a head-on confrontation, we must hold on. We must hold on regardless of the cost. In this regard, I already have a simple plan. Nian Bing, first, tell me how many experts on our side can reach the level of Lord Gods, and how many God-ranked experts do we have? Nian Bing thought for a while and said, Among the experts of the Lord Gods, we have me, Big Brother Jinluan, and my master's wife Bing Jie. In fact, only the three of us can truly reach the level of Lord Gods. In this regard, we are at a disadvantage. The other side has 5 Lord Gods. Moreover, the number of Lord Gods I mentioned is based on the 2 Lord Gods we have seen before. It is said that there are even stronger Lord Gods among those Lord Gods. This is the true difference between us and the deities. However, the destructive power of 2 Lord Gods is extremely great. If Lord Dragon God can stand on our side, we will have a better chance. However, in terms of God-ranked experts, that is, around the 13th level, we have quite a few of them. The 7 Dragon King, Kitty, my mother, and grandfather Prince Roan are all at this level. In addition to my super divine weapon Sword Soul and my Dragon God companions, we may have more than the other side in terms of numbers. After all, some of the other side's God-ranked experts have been killed by us before. In terms of strength, they have weakened a lot. In the last battle in the Ice Valley, at least 5 or 6 13th level deities were killed. This also laid some foundation for this battle with the godly mainland. After hearing Nian Bing's words, Luo Ro nodded and said, I understand. According to what you told me before, the weakest deity is probably at the level of a pugilist. However, most of them are warriors. The warrior's Do Chi has a strong resistance against magic, but it is not absolute. We have thousands of magicians on our side, and their strength is not low. In this case, we need an instant. Nian Bing said in surprise, An instant? What do you mean by an instant? Can you be more specific? Luo Ro smiled confidently and said, This instant doesn't need to be very long. However, we need you as the leader to launch our strongest attack. Remember, it is only a short instant. When the deities attack, our goal is not to fight them head-on. The difference of 1 or 2 main gods will cause us to be at a disadvantage. Therefore, our initial target will be the weaker ones among the deities. As I said before, every time we kill a deity, their overall strength will decrease by a bit. The weaker ones are obviously easier to kill, so we need to eliminate as much of their strength as possible in the initial battle. This way, even if they want to scatter later, they won't have more people. Nian Bing thought for a while and said, I understand the general idea, but how do we create this instant? Without fighting a main god, it is impossible to imagine how strong they are. Luo Ro smiled and said, Nian Bing, don't you find it strange that the 7 Dragon King are not here? Nian Bing was stunned and said, Don't tell me you asked them to seek help from the dragons? This time, the dragons will definitely participate in the deity's operation. Although the dragon god has promised to help us, when the time comes, it will be hard to predict. Perhaps the dragons will be a great help to us, but we can't really rely on them. The only thing we can really rely on is ourselves. Luo Ro shook her head and said, You are wrong. I did not ask the 7 Dragon King to seek help from the dragons. Just as you said, the dragons are a surprise force to us. The deities will definitely not expect the dragons to stand on our side. Therefore, we can't let anything happen to this surprise force. Before the war starts, we naturally can't let the 7 Dragon King contact the dragons. This is to avoid arousing the deities' vigilance. Last time, the 7 Dragon Kings didn't do their best in the Ice Valley. Perhaps the deities are already suspicious, so we can't take the risk. When they really come here, we will naturally have the opportunity to make our move. What I asked the 7 Dragon King to do is to use the advantage of high altitude to scout the enemy. No one is more suitable for this kind of scouting than them. This way, we can more easily grasp the enemy's movements. Although the powerful deities can use Do Chi to fly, but their speed can't be compared to the strongest creature in the continent, dragons. With the 7 Dragon King as our scouts, we can maximize our chances. Do you know what I asked the soldiers in the center of the formation to do? They are digging a hole, and all the magicians are accumulating magic power, all for that moment. Nian Bing's eyes lit up. He finally understood what Luo Ro meant. You're saying that the stronger true gods will fly towards us, while the weaker ones will move towards us on the ground. This way, we'll be able to differentiate their strengths and weaknesses. In addition, we will pretend to be weak, and when they come out, our experts will slaughter the ordinary deities. Is that right? Luo Ro smiled and nodded, saying, "Yes, that's right. If at the beginning we attack the enemy as a whole, then the experts of the enemy will most likely receive a large amount of magic attacks, and the casualties of the ordinary deities will be minimized. Once the enemy gets close to our camp, then we will no longer be able to stop them. Therefore, on the surface, attacking separately like this will consume a large amount of our magician's magic power, but in reality, it can inflict the greatest amount of damage to the enemy. This kind of attack. It will also lay the foundation for us to resist the ferocious counterattack of the deities. When the first wave of attacks is over, you will lead the experts to face the crazy counterattack of the high-level deities. Similarly, you only need to resist for a while and make sure that you do not get injured. Our long-range attacks will exchange attacks with yours. After these two waves, no matter how powerful the deities are, they will definitely be injured. This will be much more advantageous for us. After that, the arrangements will be even more meticulous. As long as we have a tacit understanding, it will not be difficult to repel the first wave of attacks of the deities. Cross-attack, cover fire, Luo Ro, you are really too smart. Nian Bing looked at the seemingly weak girl in front of him with admiration. She was more intelligent than any magic or martial art. Luo Ro glanced at Nian Bing with some resentment, saying, "I am only talking on paper. Whether I can really do it or not depends on the specific situation. Right now, our greatest disadvantage isn't the difference in overall strength. Instead, it's the strength of our enemies over God. If the 5 deities are about the same as the 2 you dealt with last time, then our confidence will be very high. However, if there is a guy that no one can stop, then it will be troublesome." That year, the ice goddess priest used a god's descent to destroy an army of 100,000. Although we have a large number of magicians now, and God's descent is not a threat, but if the opponent's attack is far stronger than God's descent, we will not be able to resist it. Actually, I do not have much hope in the second wave of attack. Even if it is an ordinary deity, as long as they defend, our long-range attacks may not be able to harm them. Therefore, in the first wave of attacks, you must do your best to eliminate the ordinary deities. Nian Bing nodded and said, "I understand, Ro Er. It seems that grandfather was right to let you take charge of everything." Prince Rong at the side said dangerously, "She only told you the main plan of action, there are many details that she did not mention. It was after listening to her plans that I made the decision to join her. Such a smart girl, I am afraid that there is only one in the Yangon continent. Even if Su Yu is here, it is impossible for him to do better than her. With such a strategist helping us, our chances of winning will be much higher. In a situation where we are not as strong as the opponent, strategy will become very important." Luo Ro smiled and said, "Grandfather Rong, you flatter me. How can Ro Er compare to Grandfather Su? This war concerns the life and death of our Yangon continent. Ro Er must do her best. For this plan, I have been calculating for the past few months, until we arrived here. According to the terrain, we came to the final conclusion. Right now, we need to make preparations as quickly as possible. Nianbing, you should discuss with the experts on our side how to slaughter them, right? You have to unleash your full strength." Nianbing nodded and said, "I understand. During the attack, we will try our best to avoid losing ground. Ro Er, I will also hand over my 2,000 elites to you. Later, we will talk alone, and I will tell you some of their abilities." Luo Ro smiled and said, "I also want to take you to see some things so that you can be mentally prepared." Mu Jing said, "Okay, you can go now." There was a hint of jealousy in her voice, but she admired Luo Ro from the bottom of her heart. This was not something that could be achieved through learning. Luo Ro's intelligence was something that could only be achieved through absolute talent and hard work. Nian Bing blushed and raised her head to look at her grandfather. Prince Rong smiled and said, "You can go. I will go and explain to the Rong family's magicians. When the time comes, they will be led by your uncle and father. Don't worry, with the 7 elders overseeing there, your father will not have any problems. He is worried about you and told me to tell you to be careful. This is also what I want to say to you." Nian Bing looked deeply at Prince Rong and suddenly smiled, saying, "Grandfather, thank you, then we will go." Finished speaking, she left the tent with Luo Ro. Prince Rong sighed softly as he looked at Nian Bing and Luo Ro's silhouette. He said, "It's only now that I can hear you call me grandfather. You little brat, you have too many things on your mind." Snow Soul smiled and said, "Everyone can see Nian Bing's brilliance. Although he wasn't very famous in the Yangon mainland, no one could compare to him in terms of status. I believe that perhaps after a few thousand years, he will still be the most legendary person on the Yangon continent. After all, he is only in his early 20s. When I was his age, I was still training hard." Mu Jing also looked at Nian Bing and Luo Ro's backs as they left. Her eyes were a little infatuated. After leaving the tent, Luo Ro smiled and said, "Nian Bing, come with me, we will talk as we walk." Even though she really wanted to spend more time alone with Nian Bing, she knew how to prioritize things. She couldn't afford to waste any time in the current situation, especially since she had already become the military advisor of the 4 empires. The two of them walked side by side, attracting envious gazes wherever they passed. Luo Ro's beauty was a type of beauty that came completely from within, a type of beauty that came from intelligence and agility. When she walked beside Nian Bing, she would always take a step back. She would always deliberately slow down half a step to show respect to the man she loved. He was always so rational. Even when she was emotional, she would not forget what she should do. "Roer, thank you, you have helped me greatly this time." Nian Bing smiled at Luo Ro as he walked. He could naturally feel Luo Ro's feelings, but he already had 3 lovers. How could he accept another woman? If he was not moved by Luo Ro, that would be impossible. After all, it was everyone's nature to love beauty. Such a beautiful woman with such intelligence, how could he not be moved? However, he always knew how to think for others. He did not want to see his 3 wives sad because of his flowers. Therefore, he was very careful with his actions, purposely keeping a distance from Luo Ro and Mu Jing. "What are you thanking me for? You don't need to thank me. I am only helping myself, or rather, I am doing it for the Ottoman Empire." Nian Bing's words of thanks made Luo Ro disappointed. This caused Luo Ro to feel a little disappointed. With her sensitivity, she could naturally sense the distance between her and Nian Bing. Nian Bing heard Luo Ro's resentful voice and looked into her deep eyes. His heart trembled slightly, and he quickly turned his head to look forward. He said, "The 2,000 elites under my command are very strong. Perhaps you can't imagine how powerful they are. These 2,000 people all have the strength of a great swordsman or above. A third of them have reached the level of a pugilist, and about 2% have reached the level of a swordsman." Although Luo Ro was blaming Nian Bing for suddenly changing the topic, she was still shocked by the numbers. "So strong? Is this the strength of the Blood Lion cult that you have been hiding?" Nian Bing smiled and said, "I have never hidden the secret of the Blood Lion cult from you, because I believe in you and see you as my best friend. I will be honest with you, this time, I have gathered the most elite forces of the Blood Lion cult. Among them, there are 200 god-killing crossbows with long-range attack capabilities. These 200 god-killing crossbows were the key to my victory in the Ice Valley. Now, I am handing them over to you to command. I believe that with your ability, they will be able to display their greatest advantage." God-killing crossbows, God-killing crossbows? Nian Bing, how many more surprises are you going to give me? Luo Ro looked at Nian Bing with a smile that was not a smile, her eyes filled with praise. In her eyes, Nian Bing's strength was unfathomable. Of course, he understood. If even Nian Bing would praise the god-killing crossbows, then they must be very strong. Nian Bing said, I spent a lot of effort to research these god-killing crossbows. However, the god-killing crossbows are very restrictive, and the requirements for the crossbow user are very high. Moreover, these 200 god-killing crossbows are enough to form a 5,000 heavy infantry. Indeed, the god-killing crossbows were made of the best metal in the Ice Moon Empire. In addition, the god-killing crossbows were made of gemstones that stored mana. It was definitely a large expenditure. If not for his close relationship with Yen Feng, he would not have been able to obtain so many resources. Luo Ro's eyes lit up. She said, Then I want to see how powerful these god-killing crossbows are. Nian Bing turned around and took a deep look at her. He said, The power of a god-slaying crossbow is almost equivalent to a Class 11 forbidden spell. I think that with them, you should be able to buy a longer time for that instant. What? Although Luo Ro was very intelligent, she did not expect the god-killing crossbows to be so powerful. It was almost unimaginable that their long-range attacks could reach the level of forbidden spells. If they had these 200 god-killing crossbows, the Ottoman Empire would not have to fear the Huarong Empire's powerful cavalry in a direct battle. If any empire had these destructive weapons, they would be able to easily sweep across the continent. Nian Bing smiled and said, I know what you're thinking, but you don't need to worry. The second restriction of the god-killing crossbow was the god-killing arrow. Although the god-killing crossbow's projectile power was extremely shocking, without a special god-killing arrow, its power would only be able to shoot further than a normal heavy crossbow. Its destructive power would be much weaker. If there are so many experts controlling the god-killing crossbows in a war on the continent, it would be better to let them directly participate in the war. After all, to control a god-killing crossbow, one needs at least a pugilist and 2 great swordmasters. Only then can it unleash its full power. Luo Ro looked at Nian Bing. She knew that only by seeing the god-killing crossbows would she be able to understand their secrets. She sighed and said, It seems that our thoughts coincide. What I want to show you today is related to long-range attack. It's just that these things of mine are more restrictive. Nian Bing looked at her in shock. Just as he was about to ask, Luo Ro said, Let's go quickly. You'll understand once you see them. Nian Bing smiled. The two of them quickened their pace and walked towards the hills in front of the army. As they walked, Nian Bing saw that the garrison troops were digging trenches in the ground. Each of them was carrying a long wooden plank. Wooden planks were not found in the Lost Continent. Clearly, they were brought over from the Yangon continent. Nian Bing did not know what they were used for. Luo Ro brought Nian Bing up the hill. When Nian Bing saw what Luo Ro was talking about, he could not help but turn pale with fright. His heart was once again shocked by Luo Ro's intelligence. Nian Bing saw 20 pitch-black things. Each of them had a diameter of 3 meters. Next to them, there were 3 magicians. These magicians were all busy adjusting something. These things seemed to weigh at least 1,000 kilograms. They were really too big. Although there were wheels below, it was very difficult to move them. In front of the pitch-black things, there was a long iron pipe. It was facing the sky and emitted a chilling aura. Nian Bing suddenly thought of something and asked Luo Ro, Are these cannons? I've heard of them before. But aren't they used to defend cities? Why did you bring them here? He had never seen the power of cannons before. He had only heard of them. Because the cannons were too big, they could only be used to defend cities. In war, they were a defensive weapon. To be able to bring so many cannons here, it was clear that Luo Ro had spent a lot of effort. Chapter 238. Luo Ro smiled mysteriously and said, Of course, these aren't as simple as cannons. Otherwise, how could they enter your eyes? I specially designed them. Indeed, they are very troublesome to transport. If it was a war within the continent, the other side could easily destroy them with a cavalry charge. The biggest flaw of these things is that they can only be fired into the air and not horizontally. Especially after I improved them, They can't even fall with the weight of the cannonball. I named these cannons magic crystal cannons. They are the best weapons for attacking targets in the air. As she spoke, she walked behind a cannon and lifted the cloth behind it. Immediately, what appeared in front of Nian Bing were 3 fiery red gems the size of a palm. The purity of these fire elemental gemstones was extremely high, and they were about the size of a palm. Dan Bei's consumption of these gemstones was comparable to his own god-killing crossbow. Nian Bing could vaguely guess what Luo Ro was thinking. He said, "Your cannon does have many similarities with my god-killing crossbow. The barrel of the cannon should be adjustable. However, I don't understand why it can't attack downwards. Logically speaking, this shouldn't be very difficult." Luo Ro smiled bitterly and said, "You should be able to see that the cannonballs of the magic crystal cannons aren't physical. They are energy. I spared no effort in making 40 of these cannons. The amount of resources I used was enough to build a city. But when I finished making the magic crystal cannons, I discovered a problem. Although these magic crystal cannons are very powerful, their energy intensity is too high. Once they explode with a powerful attack, they will produce a huge recoil. But these magic crystal cannons can only be used by mages. Only with the cooperation of 3 great magician-level magicians would he be able to unleash that huge recoil. This is something that no one can withstand. Mages need to place their hands on these magic crystals. Once they explode with an attack, the huge recoil will immediately kill the mage. There is also a magic backlash. I carefully researched various methods. Finally, after much effort, I was able to make them shoot into the sky to reduce the recoil and recoil. As for future research, I will have to wait for an opportunity. The explosive power of these magic crystal cannons is very terrifying. A pure fire attribute attack can flatten a small mountain. At the very least, it should have the power of a tier 10 spell. Through the amplification of the gems, the magical power of the 3 magicians was effectively combined together, which was why such a powerful attack could be unleashed. However, every 3 magicians could only fire 5 cannons at most. After the research was completed, I set it as a sharp weapon against the air. Perhaps if I were given another 10 years to research, or if I were to obtain extremely pure gems, I would be able to create a real magic crystal cannon. However, it was too late now. This thing was just right to deal with those gods who could fly. The magic crystal cannons weren't made of steel. Instead, they were made of a special synthetic metal. I discovered it by accident during my experiment. This kind of metal doesn't have any resistance to magical element. Instead, it has a certain amplification and protective effect. So, in the end, I can say that I succeeded halfway. Rower, you're really too scary. I'm afraid that only you can research this thing. The power of the god-killing crossbow was obviously greater than the magic crystal cannons, but it was also much lighter. However, that was completely based on Nian Bing's strength. Without the god-killing crossbow created by Nian Bing, the god-killing crossbow wouldn't be able to display its characteristic. However, the magic crystal cannons in front of them were different. As long as the magician's level was high enough, they could be activated. The precision of the design was something that the god-killing crossbow couldn't compare to. Although she hadn't seen it in action yet, Nian Bing was almost certain that this thing would become one of the most terrifying killing machines in the continent. Fortunately, the research wasn't completely successful yet. Luo Ro glanced at Nian Bing and said with a smile, "I know what you want to say. I also know how terrifying this thing is. However, the Ottoman Empire has been weak for a long time. If they don't have a peerless weapon, how can they protect themselves? That's why I didn't hesitate to use a large amount of resources to create these things. But now, it seems that I still failed. Don't worry, if the gods are defeated this time, I won't continue to research them. After all, with you around, the Huarong Empire will be somewhat afraid of our Ottoman Empire. When we become strong, why would we still need these things? These are the secrets of our Ottoman Empire, and they have already been revealed to you. If they can display their full potential in this battle, then my painstaking research won't be in vain. Now the other 20 are in the opposite hills. As long as those gods dare to fly over, I will let them know how powerful we are. Nian Bing looked at Luo Ro with a smile and said, although they still don't know how powerful you are, I already know. Ro, you are really much more powerful than me. When the Ice Moon Empire forced you to leave, it was really a big mistake. Alright, my Miss Ro, I have already seen these things. We should go back. There are still many things that we need to prepare. Oh, by the way, how is the situation with the refugees? Luo Ro glanced at Nian Bing and said, You don't have any good intentions towards those refugees. Otherwise, you would have sent them to the Ice Moon Lake long ago. Nian Bing sighed and said, You are so smart, naturally you can guess it. If it weren't for these refugees, how could those gods attack us? Although they are bait, I can guarantee that as long as I am still here, they will not be harmed. This is also something that can't be helped. Luo Ro smiled and said, I understand what you mean. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. Oh, by the way, I can remind you now that your big brother Halogen has become the king of the dwarves. He is now mingling with those dwarves. And Miss Yu has become the recognized queen of these refugees. In the future, how to deal with these tens of thousands of refugees, I still need you to think about it. Nian Bing smiled bitterly and said, It is better for you to help me think about this kind of problem. I am now focused on the battle, I really don't have the energy to think about these things. Luo Ro rolled her eyes and said, I can say that I don't completely belong to any empire. But in the future, the lost continent will belong to your 4 great empires. What does it have to do with me? Of course I don't care. With Big Brother Halogen and you can consider it as giving them face. You will also treat these refugees well. Therefore, I don't need to care about them. I think that with your intelligence, you naturally know how to do things that are beneficial to the Ottoman Empire. Although these refugees don't have their own civilization, they have their own talent. However, they had their own talent. According to the legends, the elves were the best archers in the Lost Empire, while the dwarves were the best blacksmith. With Big Brother Halogen, the dwarves' advantages will be revealed soon. I don't believe that you won't be tempted. Luo Ro shook her head helplessly and said, Sometimes I think you are very stupid. Because you are willing to give up everything for things that don't have much to do with you. But sometimes you are really slippery. Nian Bing, tell me, what kind of person are you? Nian Bing smiled and said, Of course I'm a man. Why? Do you want to try? As soon as he said that, he wanted to slap himself. He knew that Luo Ro was interested in him, but he still said that. Wasn't he looking for trouble? This mouth of his. Why was it getting more and more annoying? In fact, even he himself did not know that after his parents had rescued him, his heart had gradually relaxed. His mood had improved, and his emotions and personality had inevitably been somewhat affected. His previous depression had gradually been vented out. Sure enough, although Luo Ro's face was red, she bravely looked at Nian Bing. She was about to speak, but Nian Bing hurriedly said, I still have something to do, I'll go first. I'll let my subordinates report to you later. After that, she instantly left the hill. Looking at the place where Nian Bing disappeared, Luo Ro was stunned for a moment, then she angrily stomped her feet and said, You coward. Ran away from Luo Ro's threat. Nian Bing let out a long breath and couldn't help but smile bitterly. Beautiful women were good, but if there were too many of them, it wasn't necessarily a good thing. However, it felt good to have Luo Ro here. With her in charge, he could relax a lot. From morning until now, he hadn't had time to rest. Now, he was about to face the attack of the Divine Race Army. Nian Bing found a quiet place and directly used plus or minus magic to dive into the ground and began to cultivate. Just like when he was forced to comprehend Xiantian Qi under Fatso's pressure. Not much time passed. In just 2 days, the 7 Dragon King had returned. 2 days. Luo Ro had made many arrangements. Nian Bing, on the other hand, was very relaxed. Every day, he would simply discuss battle methods with the powerhouses and then cultivate alone. Now, it could be said that he was the sharpest sword in Luo Rou's hands. The news brought by the 7 Dragon Kings naturally came from the divine race. The divine race had already arrived at the Yangon continent and was advancing in a straight line. Their target was precisely where they were. Nian Bing gave this war a name: the Great War of the Gods, the war between the Yangon continent and the divine race. Compared to the Great War of the Gods, this war wasn't inferior. Almost all of the powerhouses of the Yangon continent had gathered at this place that was about to become the battlefield of the Great War of the Gods. Everyone was nervously preparing for the upcoming battle. They only had one goal, and that was to achieve the final victory. The 7 Dragon Kings continued to scout. In order to prevent being discovered, they could only observe the movements of the divine race army from afar. From the divine race to where Nian Bing was, it would take at least 4 to 5 days. After all, not all of the divine race could fly. Most of the divine servant's strength could only be considered above average in the Yangon continent. Therefore, there were still 4 to 5 days of final preparation before the war. Kitty, you don't have to participate in the first wave of battle. I'm afraid that your pets won't be able to retreat in time. Nian Bing looked at Kitty with concern. He had always treated her as a little sister. Kitty stubbornly shook her head and said, "No, I want to participate. These divine race were the executioners of my parent. I want to avenge my parents. Brother Nian Bing, the white race was destroyed because of them." At this point, her eyes couldn't help but redden. Nian Bing was surprised to find that Kitty was no longer the little girl from before. Compared to before, she was more mature. Apart from her tone, her appearance and figure had grown into a stunning beauty. She wasn't inferior to the Wind Maiden and the others. Coupled with her delicate tone, it was easy for her to give people a feeling of closeness. Seeing that Nian Bing wasn't speaking, Kitty hurriedly said, "Brother Nian Bing, let me participate. I'll be careful. My little pets are very good at protecting themselves. I promise you, as long as you retreat, I'll immediately recall them. You know that I can recall them to the space." Nian Bing frowned and said, "But your body can't withstand the attacks of those divine race. There's a distance between you and your pets. Otherwise, they won't be able to sense your thoughts. Their strength will be greatly reduced, and they might even cause chaos. Therefore, I think it's better for you to take action later in the battle." Kitty said with some grievance, "No, I want to be the first wave of attacks. At worst, you can just protect me." "Nian Bing, let Kitty go with you. You have to believe in her strength. Her spiritual magic is already very powerful. Besides, we'll protect her. As long as we retreat in time, there won't be any problems." Blue and red figures lit up. Feng Nu and Lan Chen had arrived. These days, they were still studying the heart of the phoenix. However, the results were very ordinary. They didn't make any breakthroughs. Smiling, Nian Bing's eyes revealed a faint essence. He looked deeply at Kitty and said, "All right then. When the time comes, you guys keep an eye on her. I want to be the main attacker. Moreover, under the counterattack of the divine race, I'll have to resist their attacks. I'll leave Kitty to you guys." The Dragon King returned as scouts for the last time. The news they brought was very simple. In one more day, the divine race would set foot on this land. On Nian Bing's side, all the preparations were completed under Luo Rou's command. The experts of the Rangoon continent also had to start preparing. A day's time was sometimes very long, and sometimes very short. When the sun flew to the center of the sky, a huge invisible pressure had already rushed towards the elite coalition forces of Rangoon from the front. Luo Rou stood at the front of the army. The 7 elders of the Blood Lion cult were beside her. They were all waiting. At this time, Luo Rou was still wearing a white dress. She stood out among the steel guards around her. However, standing at the front of the army, she brought confidence to all the soldiers. Luo Rou raised her right hand. Clearly, she hadn't seen the divine race yet. However, the aura told her everything. The elite army of the Four-Nation Alliance quietly sneaked into the trenches that they had dug earlier. On the surface, everything seemed to be calm now. Under the leadership of Halogen and Yu, the survivors were scattered at the back of the army. They looked in the direction of the pressure from afar. They didn't panic. Although they didn't know how powerful the forces that were coming were, they believed that the dwarf king and goddess in front of them could save them. Sometimes, faith played a very important role. Luo Ro was still standing there. The empty space around her set off her beautiful appearance. She didn't panic at all. She continued to look in front of her from afar. However, there were a few more things in her hand. What should come, would come. Luo Ro's analysis was very accurate. As the king of the divine race, Shi Jie had considered many possibilities. However, after he received news of the lost continent, he thought that it wouldn't take too much effort to eliminate these survivors. This time, he led all the divine race out in full force. His real target was the Rangoon continent. The lost continent was only a simple springboard. Only the prosperity of the Rangoon continent was what he hoped for. Along the way, Shi Jie couldn't help but be shocked when he saw the barren lost continent. Other divine race might not know, but as the king of the divine race, how could he not know the reason behind all this? Regarding the might of the three great true gods, he had a profound understanding once again. Ever since he set foot on the lost continent, he led the army of divine race to advance at the fastest speed. It wasn't because he was afraid that the survivors would escape, but because the food and water that the divine race could bring out from the lost continent was too little. These powerful divine race could hold on for a while if they didn't eat, but if even the water was slippery. Other than the divine race experts, ordinary divine race experts would find it difficult to endure. Therefore, he led these divine race experts with the intention to eliminate the last survivors of the lost continent and immediately head to the Rangoon continent. Once there, all the supply problems would naturally be solved. Shi Jie was also arrogant. Although Nian Bing killed a divine race expert and seriously injured another divine race expert, he didn't believe that the Rangoon continent would react quickly even if they knew that his army of divine race experts was coming to attack. He was afraid that they wouldn't be able to resist. Therefore, he came with full confidence, but he didn't know that an invisible net was waiting for them in silence. Shi Jie's biggest mistake was that he didn't calculate the influence that Nian Bing had on the Rangoon continent's four great empires. Of course, this couldn't be blamed on him. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't have thought that a person who wasn't famous in the Rangoon continent would have such influence. Unexpectedly, she had such a close relationship with the Rangoon continent's four great empires. The number of divine race experts flying in the air was less than what Nian Bing and Luo Ro had estimated. There were only about 20 of them, but these 20 included 5 divine race experts and 18 divine race experts. They were the true powerhouses among the divine race experts. As the powerhouses among the divine race experts, they were very arrogant. Therefore, they chose to fly. This way, not only could they see further, but it could also reflect their status. Although the divine race experts could barely fly, ordinary divine race experts needed them to lead them. Therefore, they walked on the ground. The troop of divine race experts wasn't orderly. They weren't an army, but more than 10,000 experts. Therefore, the speed at which this disorderly troop moved forward was very astonishing. When Luo Ro felt the enormous pressure, it only took a few breaths for the army of divine race experts to appear in the distance. Shi Jie flew in the middle of the divine race experts in the air. The divine race experts and divine race experts around him clustered around him. Although he was arrogant, he was a cautious person. He had more or less made some preparations for this operation. For example, the dragon god and the divine race. More than 100 dragons were flying at the back of the troop. He purposely separated the dragons from his divine race army. Initially, he wanted to let the dragon god stay with them, but the dragon god said that he couldn't leave his people. Therefore, he stayed at the back with all the dragons. What made Shi Jie more satisfied was that the dragons, including the dragon god, had mobilized all the adult dragons for this operation. This was definitely a very powerful force. One had to know that even the weakest adult dragon had the ability of level 10 to level 11. The strongest among the dragons were around level 12, second only to the 7 great dragon king and the dragon god who were left behind in the Yangon mainland. These dragons could become a terrifying force just by relying on their bodies. Furthermore, Shi Jie was very clear about the spiritual pressure that the dragons had on the Yangon mainland. Master Shi Jie, we're almost there, a divine race expert said softly behind Shi Jie. Shi Jie's eyes flashed. From afar, he had already seen the existence of the remnant citizens below. He couldn't help but reveal a cold glint on his face as he waved his hand forward. Killing these remnant citizens was as easy as crushing ants. There was no need for the divine race experts flying in the sky to do anything. The divine servants and divine race experts below could easily deal with them. Shi Jie's signal caused the divine race experts below to speed up. Shi Jie and the others also increased their flying speed. He wanted to witness this bloody massacre with his own eyes. The speed of the divine race experts below was extremely fast. Silence. Luo Ro looked at the approaching enemies without any change in her expression. A small scroll appeared in her hand. This scroll was specially designed for her by Nian Bing. It didn't require any magic power and could be used easily. It wasn't used to attack. Shi Jie was flying forward when suddenly, his cloud-hearing acupoint, which had reached the ultimate realm, moved slightly. He could faintly hear some strange sounds as if something was being stretched under the influence of a huge force. His heart, which had been very relaxed, suddenly beat violently twice. His eyes flashed and the cloud-hearing acupoint's ability immediately covered the area below. Although he was flying at a height of 300 feet above the ground, with his ability, his cloud-hearing acupoint could clearly hear even the slightest movement below. When the cloud-hearing acupoint's feedback entered his brain, Shi Jie's expression changed. This was because he had just heard the sound of close to 200,000 heartbeats. A huge sound wave instantly came from his mouth. "Stop moving forward. There's an ambush. Everyone, retreat." Shi Jie's voice was very loud. With his ability, when his voice left his mouth, it clearly entered the ears of every divine race expert. However, it was still too late for him to realize this. Right in front of them, he saw a beautiful lady in white. The lady shook her wrist and a ball of red light rose into the sky. When it rose to a height of 100 feet, it suddenly exploded. It was a ball of flame, but at the same time, it also looked like a huge blood flower. Lights and shadows. Countless lights and shadows shot out from the surrounding hills and hills. Some of the lights and shadows were very clear while others were very blurry. Shi Jie and the others were in the air. They were like the best helpers. They watched as the locust-like attacks attacked them. The sudden attack made Shi Jie frown slightly. Although he didn't understand why so many people suddenly appeared here, he still didn't feel anxious. This was because he didn't think that in this world, other than those few true gods, there was no one else. Who else could pose a threat to his existence? There was no need for Shi Jie or the other 4 overgods to take action. The 18 god-level experts activated their fighting energy at the same time. A ball of rainbow-like light exploded around their bodies and blocked the heavy crossbows that were shot at them. To their fighting energy, these tyrannical armor-piercing arrows weren't even a scratch. Looking at the fighting energy light emitted by the divine race experts in the air, a faint smile appeared on Luo Ro's face. This wasn't the real first wave of attack. Instead, it was one of the steps she took to show her weakness to her enemies. What she needed was to stop the divine race experts above from taking action. However, this first wave of attack obviously wouldn't be able to achieve that. Just as the 18 divine race experts in the air activated their fighting energy defense, The divine race experts below, who had yet to recover from their shock, suddenly felt the ground tremble. Amidst the loud rumbles, the ground actually collapsed, including the demigod experts. The tens of thousands of divine race experts below fell into a state of panic. More than 10 gigantic demonic beasts appeared out of thin air. A few low-level divine servants couldn't dodge in time and were instantly torn into pieces. Nearly 20 figures lit up with a dazzling light. The massacre began in an instant. Nian Bing and the others were hiding underground. The ground where the divine race experts had set foot on had long been hollowed out. With the existence of the 2 dark demon rats, this wasn't a difficult task. Those who suddenly appeared from underground were led by Nian Bing. Prince Rong, Nian Bing's mother Bingling, and Bing Jie didn't participate in this operation. This was because such close-range attacks weren't suitable for mages like them. Of course, Nian Bing was an anomaly. He was the leader of these attackers. A 7-colored light shot out from Nian Bing's body like lightning. As soon as he appeared, the 7 sword souls each took the lives of 4 to 5 divine servants. After 3 days of strengthening by Nian Bing, the strength of each sword soul had increased. The sudden sneak attack immediately had the desired effect. Of course, Nian Bing wasn't idle either. At the same time that the 7 sword souls shot out, 4 forbidden spells were released around his body. The place he chose was very good. It was right in the middle of the divine race experts. There were only the lowest level divine servants here. These divine servants were mostly 8th or 9th level divine servants. The difference between them and Nian Bing was too great. 4 forbidden spells of the 11th level were released in an instant. The effect was that with Nian Bing as the center, there were no living creatures within a radius of 20 feet. At least a few hundred divine race experts died under his sudden attack. These divine race experts all had fighting aura. If they could work together, although Nian Bing's magic attack was very fierce, it wouldn't be able to cause such great damage. The root of all this was the word sudden. The divine race experts had never thought that they would be ambushed. This time, Nian Bing was the main powerhouse in the sneak attack. There were also Halogen, Feng Nu, and Lan Chen. The 4 of them formed the most elite force. Originally, Nian Bing wanted to let the sacred teacher participate in this sneak attack, but the sacred teacher insisted. Although he was willing to fight against the divine race for the survival of the Yangon continent, he would never agree to a sneak attack. Of course, there were also 7 people who participated in this sneak attack. No, it should be 7 giant dragons. The 7 Dragon King had all transformed into human form. When they appeared together with Nian Bing and the other 3, it immediately became a disaster for the ordinary divine servants. In almost an instant, nearly 1,000 divine servants had died under the joint attack of these 11 people. This might seem simple, but it was ingenious. Nian Bing and the other 11 people were completely spread out, allowing them to fully unleash their power in the attack. If it wasn't for the fact that Nian Bing wanted to conserve her spiritual energy to deal with the overgods above, the number of casualties would have been much higher. However, even so, the loss of 1,000 people in an instant made Shi Jie, who was in the air, almost explode with anger. He never thought that the first battle after leaving the divine race would start like this. After a short period of sneak attack, the divine race experts began to show their strength. All the divine servants retreated to the surroundings, while the demigods came forward. There were also differences in the strength of demigod. The stronger ones were close to rank 13, while the weaker ones were around rank 12. Once more than 100 demigods surrounded them. Nian Bing and the rest of the demigods' damage figures were greatly reduced. Every second could only be counted in digit. Gods above level 12 were very powerful, so it was not easy to kill them. Shi Jie naturally could not allow such a situation to continue. He recognized the 7 Dragon King below at a glance, but it was too late for him to give an order. He waved his hand and flew down with the other 4 overgods. Almost all of them had activated the Earth Spirit Cave. They only needed a few flashes to enter the battlefield below. Shi Jie had already made up his mind. No matter who these people below were, he would completely destroy them for daring to kill the divine race expert. However, at this moment there was a sudden change on the battlefield. Another round of crossbows soared into the sky. The shining red and blue lights were obviously more sparse than the previous heavy crossbows. The crossbows were facing the overgods and divine rank experts who were preparing to charge down. Chapter 239. Naturally, Shi Jie did not care about these things. From his point of view, even if he did not use his combat energy to defend himself, he could easily withstand the attack of these crossbow arrows with his body that was stronger than dragons. However, the red and blue lights soon told him a fact. These were not ordinary crossbow bolts. They were specially made to kill gods. The violent explosion caused a complete change in the magic elements in the sky. The destructive energy only lasted for a moment before it stopped the lords from descending. Perhaps a level 11 forbidden spell was just a joke to the lords. However, what if 100 forbidden spells appeared at the same time? It was impossible for Shi Jie to not take this seriously. Moreover, they were confused by their previous show of weakness. The sudden attack produced an even greater power. Shi Jie was alarmed when Xia Yu, who had been demoted from the ranks of the lords, exclaimed. Others might not have seen it, but Xia Yu had seen the power of these god-slaying arrows. The power of a lord could only be truly experienced in battle. 5 balls of milky white light dispersed at the same time as the explosion. Not only did they protect the bodies of the 5 lords, but they also protected the 18 god-ranked experts around them. How powerful was the power of 100 forbidden spells formed by 200 god-slaying arrows? No one could answer, and no one could calculate. However, what made Luo Rou's heart beat faster was that the strongest among the gods were not killed by the 100 forbidden spells. Just this point alone was enough to shock her. She finally understood why Nian Bing was so afraid of these lords. Below, Kitty's magical beasts were still unleashing their power crazily. Nian Bing was also killing non-stop. Although the strongest gods in the sky had resisted the attack of the god-slaying arrows, their downward momentum had turned into an upward charge. After all, the god-slaying arrows were created by Nian Bing and the rest in an instant, and it was not a short instant. When Shi Jie forcefully used his combat energy to force away the frantic magic elements around him, he was finally enraged. At the same time, he knew that he had underestimated the humans. It's the people from the Yangon continent. That guy below who is constantly using magic. It's him who killed Gu Long. Xia Yu glared hatefully at Nian Bing. If it weren't for him, she wouldn't have lost her position as the chief god. The Shi world did not utter a word. He waved his hands at the same time, and 2 huge golden beams of light shot down. They actually passed through the second wave of god-slaying arrows, heading straight for Nian Bing. The other 4 overgods attacked at the same time as well. To them, distance was not absolute. At this moment, the sovereigns were standing in front of the surrounding deities. They had demonstrated their chief god-level power. When the Shi world had just launched its attack, Nian Bing could clearly feel the pressure from above. However, he did not panic at all. Of course, he knew that once he was completely locked on by that kind of attack, he wouldn't even have the chance to escape. He could only choose to fight head-on. However, he was already prepared. Almost in an instant, 11 balls of silver light lit up at the same time, and the dozen or so magical beasts disappeared at the same time. The attacks of the overgods froze in midair. Immediately after, Shi Jie saw a blob of blood blossoming in the air. What was the power of a overgod? After launching an attack, they could still forcefully change the direction of the violent energy. That was the power of a overgod. With Shi world as the leader, although the 5 overgods had lost track of Nian Bing and the others, their attacks did not stop. All 10 beams of light swept toward the hilly area on both sides. They wanted to eliminate the lurkers who had almost brought them harm. However, at this moment, 40 booms were heard. 40 huge balls of red light soared into the sky and met their attack. Those were 40 fireballs, and each of them was extremely condensed. Unfortunately, the fireballs were swallowed by the profound divine light in an instant. Following the direction of the fireball's attack, a total of 120 mages from the Ottoman Empire disappeared along with the magic crystal cannons invented by Luo Ro. However, they had, after all, slowed down the time and power of the destruction. Although thousands of crossbowmen had lost their lives in the violent explosion, the Blood Guards and the elites of the Frozen Moon Hall, who had fired 2 arrows, had just retreated out of the explosion's range, and were not harmed. Their god-slaying crossbows had also been saved. Although Luo Ro had released the second signal, her heart was bleeding at this moment. Those magic crystal cannons had cost her so much effort. When she was researching these magic crystal cannons, she had never thought that there would be anyone who could go against them. However, at that moment, she had watched her hard work turn into ashes along with those 120 precious mages. Those mages accounted for almost a third of all the high-ranking mages in the Ottoman Empire. War was cruel. As a commander, one must not be affected by one's emotions. Luo Ro naturally understood this, so she did not stop her accusations. The first wave of attacks had ended, but the second wave had just begun. The low chanting had already started when the first blood flower bloomed, and now was the time for them to unleash their power. Thousands of red lights condensed in the air, causing the entire world to turn red. The air became noticeably hotter, and a purple light was injected into the dazzling red. The red light seemed to have found its source and quickly condensed together. The violent fire dragon transformed into an incomparably huge fire dragon in the air. The fire dragon was over 100 feet long. Even if the Dragon King and the Dragon Gods were to rush over, they would not be able to compare to its size. Shi Jie, who was about to continue his attack, stopped. Looking at the huge flame, his gaze froze. This was an energy that could threaten him. The power of this magic had even surpassed the 14th level and was close to the 15th level. He saw this spell, and so did all the other gods. Following the disappearance of Nian Bing, the humans, and the magical beasts, all the gods quickly gathered together and worked together to activate their combat energy. In an instant, the ground was filled with various colors of light. The real powerful aura had just appeared at this moment. Previously, under the leadership of the Ice Spirit, the 100 mages of the Ice God Tower had once condensed a 14th-level Ice Lotus. It was this Ice Lotus. It temporarily stopped Gu Long and Xia Yu's attack. Although the mages of the Rong family were not comparable to the mages of the Ice God Tower, they had the advantage in terms of numbers. They had 1,000 mages and above. Under the leadership of Prince Rong and his 2 younger brothers, after many years of hard work, they finally activated their secret weapon. Fire Element Super Fusion Magic. The initial research of this magic had only one goal, and that was the Ice God Tower. It was also because of the existence of this magic that Prince Rong had disrespected the existence of the Ice Goddess and launched an invasion of the Kiru Empire. He was preparing to occupy the entire Yangon mainland. This was the Huarong Empire's strongest attack. Shi Jie snorted coldly. A faint golden light was emitted. It did not seem to be emitted from his acupuncture points, but from every corner of his body. Among all the gods, he was the only one who could achieve this. It was not an ability similar to light magic, but pure combat energy. The strength of this combat energy was extremely terrifying. Apart from Kitty, the 10 or so figures that had disappeared in an instant earlier all appeared in midair. Under the leadership of Nian Bing, he, the 7 Dragon Kings, the Feng Nu Sisters, and the dwarf Halogen appeared in front of the overgods and gods in the sky at the same time. They looked at the faint golden light emitted from Shi Jie's body. Nian Bing was also secretly shocked, but he did not have the slightest fear. He said coldly, "Your opponents are us. The 7 sword souls floated out, and the 7-colored light of the sky realm instantly enveloped all the experts on his side. At this moment, 2 blue figures appeared behind them at lightning speed. They were Nian Bing's mother, Bing Ling, and his master's wife, Bing Jie. The appearance of the 2 women increased the strength of Nian Bing's side by a few notches. On Nian Bing's side, there were at least 4 people who could reach level 14. They were him, Halogen, Emperor Kurobutsu, and Bing Jie, as well as other level 13 experts. Even if their overall strength was not as strong as the gods in front of them, it was definitely not much stronger. It was also because of this reason that Luo Ro dared to let them block the enemy's attack. Shi Jie looked coldly at Nian Bing. His gaze seemed to have materialized. Apart from anger, there was also a hint of mockery in his eyes. He did not seem to care about the massive magic power of the thousands of fire mages in the distance. He said indifferently, "Is this the strength of you humans? I didn't expect this. The countries of the Yangon continent actually have such foresight, daring to block our advance here. However, do you think you can stop us with this? You're underestimating the strength of the godly mainland." Nian Bing's eyes shone with a cold light. "Whether we can stop you or not is not something that can be determined by your words. Let's see how strong we really are. From the looks of it, you should be the leader of the gods. In that case, I shall be your opponent." Although he could clearly feel that the energy intensity of Shi Jie's body was very strange, he still fought bravely. As the strongest person in the Yangon continent, he naturally had to face the strongest person on the other side, who was also the leader of all the gods. Shi Jie snorted in disdain. You're not worthy." 4 golden lights lit up at the same time. Apart from Shi Jie, the 4 overgods' attack was very simple. They all slapped out their right hands at the same time. 4 golden lights went straight for the 7 sword souls at the front of the crowd. The 18 god-level experts behind them also moved. A massive amount of energy was rendered, and various colors of combat energy rushed toward the crowd in the most condensed form. Nian Bing was not angered by Shi Jie's words. At their level, it was very simple and important to stay calm. When everyone started to attack, Nian Bing's sky-eye territory suddenly changed. The original rainbow light instantly turned into a faint golden color. This faint golden color of the mages increased the power of everyone on their side instantly. The 7 sword souls at the front formed a vertical line. With Emperor Kurobutsu as the leader, they slashed their swords at the same time. The rainbow light met the golden light of the 4 overgods head-on. The battle between them became the start of the real battle. However, the explosive force produced by their mutual attack made all the attacks from the others become meaningless. The golden light and the rainbow light collided in the air. In that short moment, it was as if there was an additional sun in the sky. The intense light did not bring about a roar, but regardless of whether it was the gods or Nian Bing's side, they were all thrown back by the violent explosion. Light and shadow flickered. Dozens of top-notch experts from both sides only made contact for a short moment before they broke away from the trajectory of the attack. They were pushed hundreds of feet away by the aftershock. At this moment, the fire magic that had been prepared for a long time exploded. At the same time, Nian Bing's sharp sky-eye acupoint was shocked to discover that Shi Jie, who did not attack, had suddenly disappeared before her eyes. Using combat energy to perform short-distance teleportation was something that every powerful martial warrior could do. However, in such a violent collision that produced such a huge amount of energy at the same time, being able to teleport away without being affected by the energy was something that even Nian Bing, who was proficient in 7 elemental magic, could not do. However, Shi Jie was able to do it. The objective of Nian Bing and the others was very simple. In a situation where their overall strength was inferior to their opponents, they would follow Luo Ro's arrangement and target the magicians to hold back the powerful gods, while Prince Rong led the fire magic experts to launch their strongest attack. They would exhaust the god's strength as much as possible. In just a short moment, they would be able to weaken the enemy's overall strength. Every god they killed was very important to them. However, Shi Jie's sudden disappearance made Ling Yanbing feel that something was amiss. The 300-meter-long flame dragon had already turned dark purple. The combined power of 1,000 mages of the same element was extremely terrifying, especially since they had been working together for a long time. These elites of the Rong family all had extraordinary talent in magic. They had been cultivating since they were young to achieve what they had today. This fire dragon was actually the result of the complete compression of the fire magic. In order to launch this magic, almost all of the Rong family magicians had released all of their magical power. The power of this magic had reached its peak in an instant. When the gods below saw the appearance of this terrifying magic, they panicked. However, they quickly calmed down. The demigod experts rushed to the front of the team as fast as they could. Close to 9,000 gods circulated their combat energy at the same time. It was very difficult for combat energy to attack together like magic. After all, combat energy was not like magic. Its attack range was limited. Of course, when one reached an extremely high level, this limitation no longer existed. However, these deities who had been living in the harsh conditions of the continent of gods all this while had their own way of dealing with it. Almost all of them were in groups of dozens, fusing their combat chi together as they waited for the arrival of the giant magic spell. The fire dragon that was 100 feet long looked extremely terrifying. When it stretched its body and suddenly pounced forward, the surrounding air did not distort due to the heat. At this moment, all of the air around the fire dragon had been ignited. The area within 1,000 feet radius had completely turned into a terrifying vacuum. Even Prince Rong did not expect this to happen. The power of this magic was too great. When it pounced forward, no one could control its attack power. Everything was done by this terrifying magic. When the fire dragon was still 1,000 feet away from the gods, they could already feel the suffocating heat. At this time, in order to protect their own lives, all of the gods did not hold back and push their combat energy to the limit. They all knew that they could only block this magic if they worked together. Of course, Prince Rong understood that even though the offensive power of the 1,000 mages was terrifying, there were still 9,000 gods on the other side. If they attacked evenly from the sky, then under the effect of the many battle chis, the damage would be negligible. Therefore, when the fire dragon received his last order, the huge dragon god swooped down. When it was about 300 meters away from the gods, the huge dragon god was already level with the ground. It was charging straight at the gods from the front. By doing this, they could kill the gods to the greatest extent. Although they could definitely block it, the gods at the front would definitely be severely injured. In the face of this magic that was close to level 15, the demigod's chances of survival were absolutely zero. Except for Nianbing, everyone on the Yangon side thought that the plan was a success. They were all ready to watch the fire dragon slaughter the gods. Even Luo Ro was gratified by the success of her plan. Her gloomy mood from the previous loss also recovered a little. If someone had told Luo Ro a few years ago that a single person's strength could change the entire battlefield, she would definitely not have believed it. However, after witnessing Nianbing's strength, she had a certain understanding of this saying. But today, the enemy they were facing gave her a very vivid lesson. A gigantic flame dragon that was over 300 meters long. Its enormous body was so terrifying. When it flew close to the ground, the soil on the ground naturally disappeared, forming a deep trench. However, just as it was charging forward with all its strength, a golden figure appeared. Amidst the cheers of the gods, a golden figure suddenly appeared at the front of the gods. He did not wait and charged straight at the fire dragon. Prince Rong's eyes widened. He couldn't believe that a single person dared to face the attacks of 1,000 fire mages on his side alone. However, the truth was right in front of his eyes. The other party had done just that. In the next moment, Prince Rong felt his entire body tremble under the influence of the magic. He felt a sharp pain in his brain and his mental strength dropped rapidly. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. The golden light was so small in front of the gigantic flame dragon, but it was so firm. Shi Jie was facing such a huge magic spell alone, but his expression did not change at all. It was as if he was never worried about his own safety. He raised both of his hands, and the rich golden light transformed into a huge golden shield with a diameter of 3 feet. He held it with his left hand and blocked the gigantic flame dragon that was charging in front of him. The huge impact caused Shi Jie's body to retreat continuously. As his body slid backward, the golden shield in his hand exploded with an unusually strong golden light. It was an incomparably strong light. Another sun appeared on the ground. The flaming dragon roared as it charged madly. The power of the incomparably condensed primordial fire had been unleashed to its limit. All 9,000 gods were retreating rapidly, and the Shi world was also retreating under the attack of the flaming dragon. At this moment, everyone could see that Shi Jie's speed of retreat was gradually slowing down. The golden light on his left hand was also becoming more and more intense. Shi Jie's calm face flushed red. Both his eyes had turned completely golden. Nian Bing, who was in the air, wanted to attack downwards. However, the 4 overgods and 18 god-level experts in front of him did not allow him to do so. Although the 4 overgods were wary of Nian Bing's mental strength attack, their coordination was extremely good. Nian Bing did not have the opportunity to use his tyrannical attack. He could only rely on the Sky's Eye realm to increase the strength of his attackers. He could not leave now. Otherwise, the experts on his side would definitely be defeated by his opponent. The Sky's Eye realm that Nian Bing was currently using was an evolved ability. When he completely understood the mystery of combining 2 acupoints into one, his Sky's Eye realm had undergone a change. Not only did it possess offensive power, but it also possessed the ability to convert. What would be the effect of combining the Extreme Emperor Acupoint's ability with the Sky's Eye realm? The effect was very simple. It was to combine the original 3 abilities of the Sky's Eye realm into one and increase its strength greatly. The original abilities of the Sky's Eye realm were defense, weakening, and amplification. His ability to weaken the battle chi would have little effect on these god-ranked experts. After all, it was almost impossible to weaken their battle chi at this level. Moreover, these god-ranked experts all had different battle chi attribute. If every attribute was weakened, then it wouldn't be just the opponent that would be affected. Therefore, Nian Bing chose to amplify it. With the help of the Extreme Emperor Acupoint, the Sky's Eye realm that was amplified at full power was unleashed to a superb level. Under his amplification effect, the 7 sword souls under the leadership of Emperor Kurobutsu managed to block the first attack of the 4 lords. This bought time for the others to attack and also gave the flaming dragon a chance to destroy it. If the Shi world had not suddenly appeared below, their plan would have succeeded. Under the super amplification effect of the Sky's Eye realm, although the 7 sword souls needed some time to recover, the 4 lords' energy was shaken to a certain extent. The sword souls were immortal. Under Nian Bing's full power, the West Meridian Acupoint helped them recover their strength very quickly. At the very least, without the Shi world's interference, the overall strength of Nian Bing's side was no weaker than the god-level experts in front of them. Of course, there were also god-level experts who wanted to launch a sneak attack on Nian Bing and destroy the human who had caused them the most trouble. However, would the experts on Nian Bing's side give them the chance to do so? The answer was no. Under the lead of Halogen and Bing Jie, Nian Bing's team of experts attacked with all their might. Under the protection of the 7 Dragon Kings, if they wanted to kill Nian Bing, they would have to step over the corpses of the people in front of them. The advantage of the 4 lords did not appear. On the other hand, Nian Bing's 7 sword souls were recovering continuously. On the battlefield, Nian Bing's side had a slight upper hand. However, at this moment, Nian Bing did not feel relaxed at all. Instead, she felt unusually heavy. Why was that? It was because the She-World's performance was too valiant. It was so valiant that no one could imagine it. There was a fundamental difference between spells close to level 15 and level 14. Nian Bing asked himself, even if he worked with 7 sword souls, even if she had 7 sword souls with 7 sword souls, she would not dare to face the joint attack of 1,000 mages head-on. However, the She-World did it. At this moment, the She-World had retreated about 500 feet from the moment he used the golden shield to block the attack of the flaming dragon. The god-level experts had also retreated 500 feet. However, the speed at which She-World retreated had become extremely slow. The impact of the flaming dragon had obviously weakened. However, the golden shield that She-World produced was still as dazzling as before. Anyone could see that this level 15 super spell could no longer achieve its original goal. This was all because of one person. No. It should be called a god. At this moment, the people of the Yangon continent truly felt how terrifying a god-level expert's strength was. The She-World's defense ended very quickly. Other than using his left hand to raise the shield to block the flaming dragon, he still had his right hand. What could his right hand do? The She-World clearly told the humans of the Yangon continent. A 5-foot-long golden battle sword appeared in his right hand. It was not condensed from fighting energy. It was a genuine battle sword. If Halogen had the time to look at it now, he would definitely be shocked to discover that the strength of the energy of this battle sword was definitely a super artifact. What was a super artifact? The biggest characteristic of a super artifact was that the stronger the owner, the more powerful the weapon would be. She-World understood this concept very well. He raised the 5-foot-long golden battle sword with the shield in his left hand and the battle sword in his right. Like a god, he suddenly retreated at lightning speed. In just an instant, he had moved more than 100 feet away. Once again, he allowed Nian Bing to see him teleport amidst the violent fluctuations of magic elements and energy. As She-World retreated, the shield in his left hand had already disappeared. The flaming dragon took this opportunity to charge forward. Just when everyone thought that She-World would not be able to withstand this violent attack, the shield that had disappeared transformed into an unusual surge of golden light that merged into his battle sword. What did the humans see? They saw the golden lightning. Yes, although the golden lightning only shone brilliantly for a moment, it was enough. The golden lightning attacked in a straight line, just like Halogen's deity slaying Slash. The golden light flashed slightly and disappeared without a trace. However, the clouds in the sky had also completely disappeared. Even Nian Bing and the rest, who were fighting in the sky, had stopped their attacks because of this sword. The domineering aura that was produced when the golden lightning appeared made everyone's heart tremble violently. What kind of strength was that? What kind of violent attack was that? When the golden lightning disappeared, the flaming dragon's huge body stopped moving forward. The huge dark purple body seemed to be very unwilling, but it could no longer move forward. A violent roar that caused the entire lost continent to tremble resounded. An enormous amount of fire elements had gathered and exploded. Prince Rong spat out blood once again. The thousands of magicians under him collapsed to the ground at the same time. Fresh blood flowed out from the corners of their mouth. Their faces were as pale as paper. Not only had they used up all of their magic power, but they had also suffered a huge mental injury. That instant of backlash had caused them to lose the ability to fight. Fortunately, Prince Rong and the experts from the Rong family had blocked a portion of the backlash energy. That was why the magicians were not completely wiped out. She-World looked arrogantly at the army of more than 100,000 humans that had appeared in front of him. At that moment it was as if he was the only one that existed in this world. His heart was filled with confidence. He had been training hard for so many years. Today, in front of all his enemies and subordinates, he had displayed his strength. This was the strength that a god should possess. Shi World raised the long sword in his hand and roared, "Attack!" When the golden lightning appeared, everything was no longer going according to Luo Ro's plan. Her plan could be said to be almost perfect without any flaws. However, Shi World had used his own strength to forcefully create a flaw in this perfect plan. It was precisely because of this that the prideful nature of the gods was revealed. They charged forward as fast as they could. Everyone knew that if this group of demigods led the gods to charge into the human camp, then a massacre would occur. In the trenches, all the human warriors had climbed out. The wooden planks that Nian Bing had seen previously were now placed horizontally above the trenches so that the warriors' advance would not be hindered. At the front of the army, the Order of the Fire Dragon and the Order of the Flaming Lion of the Huarong Empire looked coldly at the approaching enemies. As the most elite cavalry in the Yangon continent, even under such circumstances, they did not feel the slightest bit of fear. The long spears in their hands were already placed horizontally. As long as Luo Ro gave the order, they would launch a deadly attack. Although the enemy was powerful, they were confident that they could stop these gods. In order to defend their honor, so what if they had to die? Chapter 240. Luo Ro's face was pale, but she didn't panic. Mu Jing and the 7 elders of the Blood Lion cult stood beside her. Their faces were pale, but at this moment, Luo Ro sent out another signal. This time, it wasn't a blood-red flower that soared into the sky, but a pure white light with a faint cold aura. It seemed to bring some coolness to the hot air. At this moment, a large number of blue light spots gathered behind the human army. Among the humans, other than the Rong family's magicians, another group of powerful magicians had made their move. They came from the Ice God Tower. The leader of the Ice God Tower was the new Ice Goddess Priestess Bing Ling, but at this moment, Bing Ling was fighting alongside Bing Jie in front of the main gods. Lan Chun was also in that battle. Therefore, the one in charge of the Ice God Tower's attack was Long Ling Ro Nu Long Ling. As Nian Bing's wife, she had always kept a low profile. However, this didn't mean that she was weak. Under Nian Bing's guidance and constant training, Long Ling's improvement was very obvious. Her Heaven's Eye point had entered the middle stage earlier than Feng Nu and Lan Chen. Her ice magic had also surpassed the 12th level, reaching the level of a god descent magician. Although there was still a certain distance between her and the 13th level, it wasn't that far away. Therefore, she was now the temporary leader of the Ice God Tower. After coming to the Lost Continent, Long Ling learned many things from Bing Ling. Bing Ling was very satisfied with his 3 daughters-in-law. He liked the gentle and quiet Long Ling, and taught her all his understanding of ice magic, including the method of commanding the Ice God Tower's large-scale magic attack. The Ice God Tower's magicians couldn't compare to the Rong family in terms of numbers. However, the Rong family's magicians couldn't compare to them in terms of individual strength. Thus, even though there were only a little over 100 of them, their offensive power was only slightly inferior to the Rong family's. According to Luo Ro's plan, the mages of the Ice God Tower were the backup team for this attack. Whichever side had a problem, they would help that side. Luo Ro had no choice but to take out her final assassin's sword. Otherwise, it would be too late. Once the enemy rushed over and mixed with the warriors, the advantage of the mages would completely disappear. Shi Jie watched as his army charged forward. There was a look of satisfaction in his eyes. He knew that other than the powerhouses in the air, the other party's main means of attack should come from the mages. Only those mages could pose a threat to his subordinate. Now, those mages should have lost their ability to use magic. All they had to do was rush over. Although there were many enemies, his subordinates were all gods. Although most of them were servants of gods, they were enough to deal a devastating blow to the enemy. Since the Rangoon continent dared to come here to stop him, then he would destroy their elites in one fell swoop. This would save the Rangoon continent a lot of trouble in the future. It wasn't that Shi Jie didn't want to rush over with his subordinate. Although he appeared to be in a good position, only he knew that it wasn't easy for him to resist the flaming dragon. After all, that enormous fire energy was condensed by thousands of magicians. How could it be extinguished so easily? He had used all his strength in the last attack just now. Only then did he manage to break the enemy's attack. The ground had completely cracked from the sudden explosion. At least 2/3 of the surrounding hills had been flattened by the explosion. Shi Jie's body had also suffered a certain degree of injury. He had always cherished his body. Feeling the hot airflow in his body and the weakened combat energy, he floated in the air and commanded his subordinates while slowly regaining his breath. At this moment, Shi Jie saw a large area of condensed blue light spots. They weren't affected by the fire magic just now. The magical elements in the air seemed normal. Judging from the intensity of the blue light spots, this was obviously another large-scale magic. Shi Jie's expression changed. From the information that Xia Yu brought back, he didn't know that there were so many powerful existences in the human world. Looking at the ice magic that was gradually taking shape, he had no choice but to stop the recovery of his body and fly forward. At this moment, he also understood that every death of one of his subordinates would reduce the strength of the army of gods. Therefore, he had to protect his subordinates as much as possible. As Shi Jie rushed out, he suddenly had a feeling of uneasiness. This was because he suddenly remembered that there seemed to be a very powerful force in his army of gods that hadn't made a move yet. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. His eyes revealed a strong sense of anger. However, at this moment, he no longer had the ability to save his subordinate. Yes, when the magicians of the Ice God Tower launched their attack, the dragons at the rear, under the leadership of the Dragon God, attacked the gods from the rear. From the time they were ambushed until now, only a short 10 minutes had passed. In these 10 minutes, the gods had been attacked by concentrated long-range firepower, sneak attacks by Nian Bing and other powerful human beings, and bombardment by super magic. Although the 7 Dragon Kings were helping Nian Bing, the gods didn't have much time to think. Therefore, even though Shi Jie thought about the possible changes that the dragons might cause, he still had to face the magic attacks in front of him after weighing the pros and cons. The Dragon God had been waiting for an opportunity. Originally, when Nian Bing and the rest intercepted the Lords of Gods, he wanted to make a move. Others might not know Shi Jie's strength, but he was very clear about it. However, when Shi Jie suddenly appeared below him, he had no choice but to dispel this thought. Under those circumstances, if he attacked Shi Jie, it was very likely that he would trigger his magic and be attacked by the powerful flame dragons. Therefore, he could only wait. Now, when Shi Jie rushed out and prepared to welcome the arrival of the ice magic, it was undoubtedly the best opportunity. Under the leadership of the Dragon God, dozens of dragons pounced on the gods at the rear. At this moment, all the demigod experts among the gods were at the forefront. They had even forgotten that there were still dragons behind them. After all, the Dragon God was also an expert at the level of a Lord of Gods. Although the lethality of the dragons he led was not as strong as Nian Bing and the other experts who attacked at the same time, it was still a surprise attack. Moreover, they were facing divine servants, so it was still very troublesome for the gods. Moreover, at this moment, a petite figure was sitting on the back of a giant dragon. The demonic beasts that had disappeared earlier appeared once again. When the Lords of Gods above them reacted, Nian Bing led the experts of the Yangon continent to activate the spatial magic scroll. Only Kitty chose a different direction from them. She was behind all the gods with the dragons covering her. No one had discovered her. At this moment, it was the perfect opportunity to beat a drowning dog. How could she not appear? Fox Na Na's large-scale support ability was activated once again. This time, not only did the demonic beasts produce a super strong attack under the strong stimulation, but even the dragons were affected. The thick stench caused the dragons to enter a state similar to berserk. This state was something that the dragons themselves did not expect. However, the increase in attack power was unusually obvious. Nana shook the spikes on her butt and lay on the back of the nine-tailed dragon, Little Stutterer. She had used all her strength to release this super stinky support magic, but she was now very weak. However, her obscene gaze seemed to be very satisfied with her masterpiece. After all, so many dragons had become the attack power of her support magic. If the dragon god had not reacted quickly, she was afraid that she would have been contaminated with the stench. Kitty sat on the back of the nine-tailed dragon, Little Stutterer, and used her spiritual power to command these giant demonic beasts during the battle. Although Little Stutterer was the strongest one, he rarely participated in the early stages because his main task was to protect Kitty from harm. After all, other than her spiritual magic, Kitty's body was too weak. The faint blue light spots condensed into a huge ice lotus. Back then, Xiaoyu, who was still a lord of gods, had used all her strength to split open the ice lotus, but she had also been injured. Otherwise, she would not have chosen to explode her acupoints when facing Yanbing. Now, it was the Shi realm who had to face this ice lotus. The ice lotus appeared when all the gods were 500 feet away from the human warriors, blocking the entire area from the front. The blue light that was filled with cold air and energy surged out, forming a thick layer of ice on the ground. Shi realm's eyes emitted a cold glint. Of course, he knew that he had to deal with this magic as soon as possible so that he could deal with the dragons. If it was under normal circumstances, the dragon god would naturally not be a threat to him. However, it was different now. The huge flaming dragon from before had already consumed a lot of his energy. The dragon god's strength was around the middle of the lords of gods, but he had the strong body of a dragon and his dragon language magic. Even if Shi realm wanted to kill him, it would not be an easy task. Therefore, he was now somewhat anxious. The dragon god was also racing against time. The lords of gods and god-level masters in the sky were already being held back by Nian Bing and the rest. Before the Shi realm returned to help, it was the best time to attack these gods. Ever since the dragons settled down in the mainland of gods, the dragon god had never had a good impression of these gods. Especially after the great war of the divine remains, he was even more disappointed in these gods. If it were not for the constraints of the lords of God's strength, he would have led his people and left long ago. Now, it was obviously the best opportunity. Back then, the Shi realm had once suggested to let the dragons become the mounts of the powerful god. However, the dragon god vetoed the idea. He would rather the dragons be destroyed than let his people become the mounts of these gods. Otherwise, once the contract was signed, it would be impossible to reverse it. Although the lifespan of the gods was not endless, the powerful gods had the opportunity to live as long as the dragons. Once they became their mounts, would they not be enslaved for life? Dragon language magic exploded continuously amidst the dragon god's deep dragon roar. The gods in front were attracted by the huge ice flower. Of course, they hoped to see the Shi realm show their might once again and completely destroy the opponent's magic. Therefore, it was already too late when they discovered the sneak attack from the dragons behind them. This caused the dragons to not attack in human form like the 7 dragon kings. They completely relied on their physical bodies and crazy dragon breath to launch their strongest attack. Most of the gods did not know that the 7 handsome men and women who had launched the sneak attack were actually the Dragon King's incarnations. After all, the Dragon Kings had always been in the mainland of Yangon and were not familiar with this place. Therefore, apart from the Shi realm who had woken up, all the gods did not expect such a huge force to suddenly appear behind them. Therefore, the divine servants were unlucky. The dragons were like scythes that continuously reaped their lives. When the divine servants finally realized that something was wrong and rose up to resist, 700 to 800 of them had already died in the sudden attack of the dragons. This number was still increasing. After all, although the divine servants had organized to resist the attack of the dragons, the difference in strength was so obvious. If it were not for the protective equipment made of special minerals on their bodies, perhaps the dragons' massacre would have been even easier. After all, they were under the leadership of a king god. The difference between a king god and a divine servant was too great. Almost every movement and magic of the dragon god could take the lives of at least a few to a dozen divine servants. The she-realm's huge golden blade was raised again. The ice lotus only appeared for a moment before it suffered the same fate as the flaming dragon. It was also struck by golden lightning, but the ice lotus, which was not as strong as the flaming dragon, was almost instantly shattered. However, this time, the ice god tower was much luckier than the mages of the Rong family. The backlash they suffered was much smaller. It was not that she-realm was being merciful, but the attack power of the golden lightning he released this time was much weaker. After the golden light flashed, she-realm flew back without any pause to meet the dragon god and the dragons who were in the midst of a massacre. Under his orders, the gods were divided into two groups. One group was led by the demigods. About 2,000 people rushed toward the warriors of the Rangoon mainland. More of them rushed back to encircle and annihilate the elites of the dragons. After all, they had to settle the internal conflict before they could invade the external conflict. The current situation was the last thing she-realm wanted to see. Although the gods were powerful, the feeling of being attacked from the front and back was definitely not easy. She-realm's eyes were fixed on the dragon god. His powerful aura was locked onto the gigantic dragon that was more than 10 feet long. Its entire body was shining with golden red light. She-realm's eyes were filled with fury. Why? Why did you choose to be sentenced to death? The dragon god looked at him coldly. We dragons have never truly belonged to the Quake mainland. There's no such thing as betrayal. She-realm, you may have always thought that the gods are the most powerful, but there's one thing I have to tell you. Nothing is absolute in this world. The Rangoon mainland is the last pure land in our world. I can't watch it be destroyed in the hands of selfish fellows like you. The dragons will always stand on the side of justice. Back then, it was because I was too hesitant that the civilization of the lost continent was destroyed. However, I will never let the same situation happen again. You will never understand my thoughts in the she-world. The golden light continued to shine on the super artifact long sword. A layer of golden armor gradually condensed on she-realm's body. The fury in his eyes subsided and was replaced by an icy coldness that was filled with the aura of death. He did not look at the dragons who continued to massacre the gods. He knew that only by killing the dragon god in front of him could he stop the massacre of the dragons below. However, killing a king god was easier said than done. Therefore, at this moment, he had already displayed his full strength. She-realm's body suddenly became illusory. He did not even say another word to the dragon god before he launched his attack. Faint golden phantoms appeared in every corner of the dragon god's body. The golden sharp blade carried an incomparably powerful fighting aura as it launched a deadly attack on the dragon god. The dragon god appeared to be very calm. His gaze did not chase after the faint golden phantoms. A layer of golden red light instantly erupted from the dragon god's body. It formed a halo that surged into the surroundings. The dragon god did not have the Tian Yen acupoint or the listening cloud acupoint to distinguish the direction of the enemy's attack. The only thing he could do was to attack indiscriminately. He released his powerful dragon aura in every direction of his body. Only in this way could he temporarily block she-realm's attack. When the dragon god and she-realm clashed, the battle in the sky had also entered a white-hot state. The strength of the four kings had exceeded Nian Bing's expectations. He was surprised to find that the four expressionless kings were all stronger than Xia Yu and Gu Long. Moreover, although their fighting style was simple, the strength of their attacks was extremely difficult to defend against. Obviously, they all possessed the ultimate Emperor acupoint. In addition to the 18 god-level experts, their combined attack was too powerful. Now, the powerhouses on Nian Bing's side had thrown themselves into the attack with all their might. This included the 7 Sword Souls and Oscar. They launched wave after wave of attacks in a frenzy. They were suppressing their opponents from the front. However, under the leadership of the 4 kings, the gods built a huge barrier. No matter which angle Nian Bing and the others attacked from, they would be blocked. The 7 Dragon Kings' draconic magic constantly exploded into balls of colorful light in the sky. Unfortunately, their magic could not destroy the barrier. Nian Bing and Bing Ling were at the back. As Bing Ling had the midstage ultimate Emperor acupoint, she had no problem protecting herself as long as it was not a full-force attack from the kings. However, this was not the case for Bing Ling. Among the powerhouses on the Yangon side, she was the weakest. Nian Bing had to split his attention to protect his mother. He was afraid that something would happen to her. This was a helpless action, but it was also something he had to do. Halogen had become the sharpest blade on the Yangon side. With his strength and the god-slaying axe's tyrannical attack, he could often disperse the king's ultimate Emperor acupoint's Do Chi when he faced the kings. The last time he faced the kings, Halogen had suffered heavy injuries. Although he had used all his strength, he was still not a match for the kings. However, he was different now. These days, he had been training hard and was surprised to discover the secret of the god-slaying axe. After his body had merged with the axe's soul, his strength had increased tremendously. This was also why Nian Bin said that he had reached level 14. If it was a one-on-one battle, Halogen, who had just reached level 14, would not be a match for any of the kings. However, he did not have to worry about his surroundings now. He only needed to use all his strength to attack. Garamandes roared, and the red light dimmed significantly. He clashed head-on with a god-tier expert. Although he had torn his opponent's arms apart, he had also received a solid kick. This kick landed right on his chest. If it were not for the dragon's strong defense, this kick would have taken the life of the Dragon King. Even so, Garamandes was still heavily injured and temporarily left the battle. The 7 Dragon Kings had been working together for many years. With one suddenly gone, their strength was weakened. Although Kagios used his battle prowess close to level 14 and cooperated with Emperor Kurobutsu to block most of the enemy's attacks, the Yangon side gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. Nian Bing knew that it was time for him to launch that kind of attack. Although Emperor Kurobutsu had warned him not to use spiritual attacks unless it was absolutely necessary, or else it would easily backfire. However, at this moment, if he did not do anything, the powerhouses on his side would easily be dealt a fatal blow. Nian Bing did not want to see anyone on his side get hurt. These were all his family and friends. Therefore, standing beside his mother, he still fully released the Sky Eye domain. His eyes quietly turned golden, and his spiritual fluctuations began to become stronger around his body. The 4 main gods brought up 4 golden lights like swimming dragons. Not only did they block Emperor Kurobutsu's attacks, but they also blocked the attacks of Emperor Kurobutsu. At the same time, they also blocked the attacks of the Dark Dragon King, Kagios, and Halogen. At the same time, they also blocked part of the attacks of the Sword Souls and several other Dragon Kings. If it were not for Bing Jia beside Nian Bing, if the 2 ice spirits' continuous release of powerful ice-type magic had caused them to be apprehensive, their murderous intent would have been ignited long ago. At this moment, the 4 main gods felt Nian Bing's spiritual fluctuations at the same time. A tall, burly sovereign with snow-white hair suddenly called out, "Be careful of spiritual attacks. Fortify your heart." With his warning, all the god-level powerhouses shuddered at the same time. At this moment, Nian Bing's spiritual attack appeared. A faint golden light rose into the sky like a long arrow. Immediately after, it turned into a faint shadow and shot toward one of the god-level powerhouses. With the abilities of Nian Bing's current acupuncture points, his physical-spiritual attack, coupled with the power of the extreme Emperor Acupoint, would be a headache even for the Shi world. He was no longer the Nian Bing who killed lizards on the godly mainland. Under the full lockdown of the Sky Eye Acupoint, as long as he locked onto his target, his physical-spiritual attack would definitely hit the target. The golden light flashed and disappeared without even a scream. That god-level powerhouse's head burst into a ball of bloody light, and he was instantly killed. At the same time, Nian Bing's body swayed as a wave of dizziness swept through his mind. With the main god's warning, every god-level powerhouse strengthened their spiritual power. Although Nian Bing's spiritual power was much stronger than theirs, it was impossible to forcefully attack without paying a price. The death of a god-level powerhouse reduced the pressure on the powerhouses of the Sunshine Mainland. However, the reduction in pressure only lasted for a moment. The attacks of the four main gods suddenly became stronger. Among them, two of the main gods suddenly increased their speed, and their bodies shot toward the crowd like phantoms. The remaining 6 Dragon King hurriedly activated their draconic magic. They barely managed to block them by exhausting more of their draconic power with a large-scale attack. On the other hand, the bodies of the other 2 main gods emitted a pure milky white light, greatly increasing the defensive power of the god-level powerhouses. For a moment, they actually managed to block the all-out attack of the 2 ice mages who worked together with Halogen and Blade Soul. Nian Bing took a deep breath. Of course, he knew what this was. It was the ultimate Earth Spirit Point and the ultimate Square Armor Point. After all, the main gods were still the main gods. The movements of the main gods obviously gave the god-level powerhouses a stronger desire to attack. The various colors of light became monotonous, and they all activated the abilities of their acupuncture points. All of a sudden, their attacks and defenses became even stronger. Nian Bing floated in the air. The auxiliary ability of the Sky's Eye domain was strengthened once again. At the same time, his physical-spiritual power attack was launched again. In order to reverse the situation, he attacked 2 god-level powerhouses this time. Nian Bing was very clear that with his physical-spiritual power, he only had the strength to destroy one main god. But after destroying any one of the main gods in front of him, his spiritual power would be greatly weakened. If he wanted to destroy any other main god, he was afraid that he would have to face an unbearable pressure. At that time, without the assistance of the Sky's Eye domain, the remaining 2 main gods would be powerhouses on his side. Only under the effect of the Sky's Eye domain, Halogen, Emperor Kurobutsu, and Kagorosis could resist the other party's attacks. Thus, after weighing the pros and cons, he could only use his physical-spiritual power to attack those god-level powerhouses on the premise of maintaining the Sky's Eye domain. 2 faint golden lights flashed past, and then 2 blood-red lights exploded. The Sky's Eye domain clearly weakened for a moment before returning to normal. Nian Bing's body would have fallen from the sky if not for his mother's support. His mind instantly went blank. If not for his firm willpower supporting him, the Sky's Eye domain would have stopped being released. The backlash from attacking 2 god-level powerhouses at the same time was even stronger. He knew that if he wanted to continue maintaining the Sky's Eye domain, he definitely couldn't use his physical-spiritual power attacks anymore. The god-level powerhouses naturally saw Nian Bing's situation, but at this time, they still felt a certain amount of panic. After all, 3 instant kills. 3 god-level powerhouses had lost their lives just like that, and this created a huge pressure in their hearts. Apart from the 4 main gods, the other god-level powerhouses were hesitating in their hearts. Would they become that guy's next target? The hesitation in their hearts caused their attacks to weaken a little. At this time, the 6 Dragon King and Halogen were all injured, and the light on the 7 Sword Souls had dimmed significantly. Only Nian Bing's Sky's Eye domain's assistance had not weakened. On the other hand, although the god-level powerhouses were still in a balanced state, Nian Bing's side had lost everyone's strength, and they had lost the lives of their god-level powerhouses. Every time that faint golden light flashed, a life would be taken away. They were already panicking in their hearts. 3 god-level powerhouses had died, and one of them had lost the ability to attack because his arms were destroyed by Garamandes. Although he was still alive, he had already left the battlefield. It would be difficult for him to become a god-level powerhouse in the future, let alone today. The battle in the sky became more and more tragic, and the battle between the known god and Shi Jie on the ground was even more brutal. There were dozens of wounds on the dragon god's body that were so deep that his bones could be seen. Although his dragon body's defense was strong and he had the protection of the dragon power, it was difficult for him to truly resist Shi Jie's supra-artifact golden sword. The battle between them was still in the same state as before. The dragon god continued to release his draconic magic and draconic aura, attacking in all directions at the same time. Shi Jie's body remained in an illusory state, and he relied on his speed to find a flaw in the dragon god's all-around attack. Although he had the absolute upper hand, the dragon god's body that was constantly flying forward and releasing draconic magic at full force had caused the god-level powerhouses below to suffer a lot of losses. In addition to the crazy attacks from Kitty and the giant dragons, the number of god-level powerhouses was gradually increasing. What happened to the 2,000 god-level powerhouses that had rushed towards the human warriors? They had rushed in. Yes, they had already rushed into the human warriors' camp. However, it was not just the 2,000 god-level powerhouses that had rushed in. Only 1,200 god-level powerhouses had managed to rush into the human camp. This was because they had been blocked by the god-killing crossbows before they had rushed in. After the god-killing crossbows had been withdrawn, they had directly entered the human army. Seeing the god-level powerhouses charging towards them, the god-killing crossbows released a huge amount of energy. Chapter 241. If it weren't for the demigod experts at the front, the losses of the gods would have been even greater. Of course, the death of nearly 1,000 gods wasn't just caused by the god-killing crossbows. Within a certain distance, the gods were completely scattered, no longer giving the god-killing crossbows the opportunity to unleash their full power. At this moment, the 2 strongest knight regiments of the Huarong Empire charged out of the battle formation with the flames of honor burning in their hearts. The strength of the gods was once again displayed in front of everyone. The Order of the Fire Dragon. Every knight was carefully selected. They had their own dragon spears and their own dragon mounts. They were the strongest Rangoon cavalry outside of the Order of the Flaming Lion. What was their fate now? It was a simple word: death. The 2 knight regiments had only launched a single charge, but the price they paid was total annihilation. Under the leadership of over 100 demigod experts, the knights didn't have much of a chance. They could only rely on the violent charge to take away the lives of hundreds of gods before disappearing from this barren land forever. The most outstanding knight regiments of the Huarong Empire, the one that the Huarong Empire spent countless efforts to create, were destroyed just like that. Prince Rong, who had just recovered some of his vitality, couldn't help but vomit blood when he saw this scene. He fainted. Nearly 1,000 gods were killed out of the 2,000 gods. Most of them died under the dual attacks of the god-killing crossbows. The results of these 2 elite knight regiments were pitifully small. At this moment, the human warriors all raised their weapons. None of them retreated. They all thought of their families. If these ferocious gods went to the Rangoon continent, what would happen? What kind of scene would that be? Therefore, although they knew that they would be courting death, they still raised their weapons. They launched a suicidal resistance against the god. At this moment, the individual strength of the gods was already on display. Although there were only 1,200 gods, what they brought was the call of the god of death. The number of human warriors decreased sharply. In the beginning of the battle, the gods didn't suffer any losses. Those demigod-level experts were almost invincible. Every time they attacked, they could easily take the lives of over a dozen human warriors. At this point, their eyes had already turned red from the killing. The resentment from being suppressed by magic and crossbows was completely released. In their hearts, only fresh blood could release the resentment in their hearts. However, the arrogance of the gods did not last for long. The situation went from one-sided to a stalemate, because the elites of the Blood Lion sect appeared. 2,000 Blood Lion cult elites, 500 Blood Guards and 100 Ice Moon Hall experts, led by the 7 elders and 5 hall masters of the Blood Lion cult, appeared in the midst of the Rangoon warriors surrounding the godly beings. Their appearance immediately slowed down the rate at which the human soldiers were being slaughtered, and the number of deities also began to decrease. Among them, the ones who had the most obvious effect were not the swordsman-level experts. This was because, including the 7 elders of the Blood Lion cult, these experts were facing demigod-level experts who were stronger than them. They used their lives to barely resist the attacks of their opponent. On the other hand, the ones who began to reap the lives of the enemies were the Blood Guard. Yes, the 500 Blood Guards who grew up in iron and blood. The Blood Guards never wore armor. They always wore dark red warrior robes, just like their weapons, which were always sharp swords. Their swords not only had strong penetrating power, but also had long-distance poison. Their addition was a nightmare for the gods. Under the sneak attacks of the Blood Guards, the casualties of the divine servants of the gods kept increasing. In the eyes of the Blood Guards, in order to achieve their goals, they could use any means. Often, when a human warrior was killed by a divine servant, the Blood Guards would quietly stab out from under the human warrior's armpit with all their strength. Even if their own bodies were pierced by the divine servant's weapons, their attacks would not stop for a moment. What the Blood Guards brought was a kind of spirit. They did not care about their own lives at all. As long as they were still breathing, their attacks would not stop. Although the Order of the Fire Dragon and the Order of the Flaming Lion were experts in war and had strong charging power, in a fight against experts, their charging power was not of much use. In the previous battle, it was precisely because the demigod-level experts at the forefront completely restrained their explosive charging power that they were completely wiped out. However, the Blood Guards were different. They were the most elite forces of the Blood Lion cult. In previous battles, their goal was to assassinate experts who were stronger than them. Therefore, their tactics were the most effective against these gods. The Blood Guards were like cunning poisonous snakes, always hiding in the dark corners. However, when they suddenly attacked, they would always gain something. What they gained was the lives of their enemies. In order to gain something, they sometimes had to pay with their own lives. With the addition of the Blood Guards, the battle became a stalemate. The hundreds of thousands of soldiers from the Rangoon continent surrounded the remaining 1,000 gods and killed them. Although they could not cause much damage to the gods, their firm belief in protecting the Rangoon continent made them fearless in the face of these powerful gods. If there were not hundreds of demigod-level experts among the gods, they would have been slaughtered long ago. However, their absolute strength did not allow the Rangoon continent to gain any advantage. Every time they killed a god, they had to pay with a few, or even a few dozen, or even hundreds of lives. This was the result of the chaotic battle. The battle was still in a stalemate, and there were casualties on 3 sides. The casualties in the air were obviously the least. After Nian Bing's spiritual power was greatly weakened, both sides could only injure each other, but not kill each other. No one could say for sure which side the decisive battle would be, but it could be said that the outcome of any battle would affect the overall situation. Nearly 6,000 deities were slaughtered by the dragons, and their numbers were greatly reduced. Without the help of a demigod-level expert, they had almost no chance against the dragons. The strong defense of the dragons prevented them from being fatally injured. However, whether it was their breath or their tyrannical bodies, they were nightmares for the gods in front of them. The battle had become chaotic. On Luo Ro's side, a low chant sounded, but it was not loud. It was completely covered by the sounds of the battlefield. However, there were less than 1,000 gods left here, but they did not know that it was this inconspicuous chant that decided their fate. A layer of green fog filled the air, covering the Rangoon continent's army and the gods. Both sides were shocked. The gods cautiously retreated a little, but they soon realized. This green fog, which was filled with an evil aura, did not have any effect on them. After a few probing attacks, they revealed their ferocious side. They once again entered the battlefield and continued their slaughter. However, they soon realized that something was not right. Broken corpses gradually stood up from the ground. There were the dead Order of the Fire Dragon and Order of the Flaming Lion, as well as the dead soldiers and blood guards of the other countries in Rangoon continent. Their auras became abnormally cold, and some of them even had blood dripping from their bodies. The evil aura filled the entire battlefield. All of the human warriors quickly retreated under Luo Ro's orders, while the warriors who stood up once again charged forward. Facing the attacks of the gods, they did not feel pain at all. The method they used was to perish together with the enemy. Unless their bodies were completely destroyed, they would bite their opponents even if only their heads were left. Their combat strength increased instantly. Not only were the gods affected physically, but their hearts were also trembling at the same time. The ones who attacked them were actually their own companions. What was this? What were these things? Under the influence of the green fog, the balance of the battle on Luo Ro's side began to tilt. Yu stood in the middle of the crowd with a pale face. She was not tall, and apart from Ping Chao who was guarding her, even the soldiers on Rangoon continent did not know that everything in front of them was caused by this little girl's strength. The green fog was released by Yu. How she wished she did not have to use this magic. However, reality proved that she still had to use it, because enough people had already died. Ah, this is necromancy magic. We have to find the necromancer. A demigod god shouted in fear. They could easily kill human soldiers, but it would not be easy to tear them into pieces. Moreover, this undead army numbered in the tens of thousands. These tens of thousands of people had died at their hands, but now they had become their enemies. Monstrous resentment continued to rise. Under the assault of the undead army who did not know what death was, the gods began to retreat. They were already terrified. Luo Ro raised her hand again. She was holding the token that Nian Bing had given her. Of the 2,000 elites that Nian Bing had given her, less than 1,500 were left. Of the 500 blood guards, only 200 were still alive. Although the casualties were heavy, the deaths of the blood guards were something to be proud of. Because every blood guard had killed at least one god, a god whose strength was on par with them. Luo Ro closed her eyes. Tears flowed down her cheeks and dripped onto the ground. She gave the order, God-punishing arrows, target the front. Fire and ice explode. Shoot. There were a total of 200 god-killing crossbows. Because of the casualties, there were only about 100 crossbows left. The warriors of the Bloodlion cult only knew how to carry out orders, even if the targets of their god-killing crossbows were their dead brothers. The giant crossbows were pulled back, and the super crossbows flashed red and blue. With a wave of Luo Ro's hand, dozens of forbidden-level crossbows exploded with the power they should have. With the scopes designed by Dwarf King Yuelwen, none of the arrows missed. They completed their mission. The light of the magic exploded in the center of the remaining hundreds of gods and tens of thousands of undead warriors. The intense power of the forbidden-level spell instantly created an empty space. The remaining hundreds of gods were completely surrounded by the undead warriors. With such an intense magic suddenly exploding from their heads, they finally could not resist. After another few hundred corpses, only a few powerful demigod gods managed to escape the battlefield. There were only about 100 of them. In this battle, they had lost another 2,000 elite deities. Under the special care of the warriors of the Bloodlion sect, Only the warriors in the innermost circle were affected by the outburst of the forbidden level spell. There were still more than 20,000 undead warriors left. Without any hesitation, under the guidance of the green fog, they rushed toward the large group of gods who were fighting the dragons. Once the suicidal attack started, it would not stop until all the undead warriors had lost their lives. The more powerful the undead warriors were when they were alive, the more powerful they would be after turning into undead. Among these undead warriors, there were now more than 1,000 undead gods. Under the cover of the green weapons, they charged towards the remaining undead gods. At this moment, a dragon's roar was suddenly heard. The roar was filled with anger and unwillingness. The dragon god's huge body slowly fell, and there was a long golden blade in his heart. Shi Jie stood in front of the dragon god. His chest was heaving up and down as he breathed in the air that was filled with blood. At this moment, his 7 orifices were bleeding at the same time. His body was trembling slightly. The clothes on his body were no longer intact, revealing his steel-like muscles. Looking at the dragon god's eyes that were filled with anger, he said hatefully, "Do you regret it?" The dragon god looked at him with a deathly gaze. "No, I do not regret it. This is the only way for us dragons to return to the light. Shi Jie, you will not succeed. The human warriors will completely destroy you despicable fellows from the continent of gods." Shi Jie took a deep look at the dragon god. Under his continuous attacks, even the dragon god who possessed the Dragon God Heart Sutra was covered in wounds. His internal organs had also been shattered by his own violent do qi. However, his eyes were firm. Yes, he did not regret his actions. Shi Jie felt a sense of respect for the dragon god whom he had been with for tens of thousands of years. He pulled out his golden blade and allowed the dragon god's blood to splatter all over his body. He could not bear to destroy the dragon god's body anymore. 7 sorrowful dragon roars were suddenly heard. The 7 dragon king in the air, including the severely injured Garamandes, attacked the opponents in front of them without any regard for their lives. Amidst their roars, all the dragons let out frenzied cries. The intensity of their attacks doubled in an instant. These dragons were like the undead warriors. They no longer cared about the damage they would receive and launched an abnormally crazy attack. They only had one goal, which was to charge toward the dragon god. Shi Jie simply scanned the scene and understood what was going on. A golden blade radiance slashed out. The blade radiance expanded in the air and went straight for the undead warriors. A violent explosion caused a rain of blood to fall. The tens of thousands of undead warriors at the front were crushed by this domineering attack. Shi Jie looked hatefully at the human army in the distance and roared unwillingly, "Retreat!" If the army of gods really wanted to retreat, no one could stop them, especially when Shi Jie was showing his might. However, could the dragons make them retreat? Seeing that the dragon god had suffered a fatal injury, the dragons who had ambushed the gods from behind went crazy. They did not care if they could hurt Shi Jie and launched a suicidal attack on him. When the 6th dragon died under Shi Jie's golden blade, a dying dragon roar was heard. "Let them go." Blood kept flowing out from under the scales of the dragon god. However, his voice was very stable. He took a deep look at Shi Jie and gave his last order to his people. The dragons went crazy because of the dragon god. They also disappeared because of the dragon god. They could not bear to reject their king's last order. All the dragons flew up, including Little Stutterer who was carrying Kitty. Little Stutterer flapped his golden dragon wings and rose into the sky with Kitty on his back. All the demonic beasts were recalled by Kitty at this moment. In the previous battle, although the demonic beasts had unleashed a very powerful killing power, the 9-melon poisonous spider was already dead. After all, his body was relatively weaker. The other demonic beasts had also suffered different degrees of injuries. The combat energy of the gods was not as simple as it seemed. The main gods who were fighting Nian Bing and the others immediately launched a fierce attack after receiving Shi Jie's order. However, What shocked them was that the 7 dragon kings in front of them did not seem to care about his own life. He actually cooperated with the others to block their attacks. They only managed to escape from the battlefield after sparing the life of another god-ranked expert. After meeting up with the Shi Jie below, they quickly escaped. The deities came quickly and left quickly. In just a short while, the remaining 4,000 deities had all retreated, leaving behind a ground full of blood and corpses. The battlefield fell into silence. Garamandes spat out another mouthful of blood, but he did not stop and rush down. The 7 dragon kings followed after him as he came to his father's side. Nian Bing and all the experts from the Rangoon mainland surrounded the dragon god's mountain-like body. Luo Ro turned around from afar. She could not bear to watch this scene and ordered the generals under her to begin integrating the army from the Rangoon mainland. The dragons also descended from the sky and surrounded the 7 dragon kings. They lowered their proud heads and their huge bodies prostrated on the ground, using silence to express the sorrow in their hearts. Garamandes stood in front of the dragon god and held his huge forearm. "Father, you must hold on. You will be fine. We dragons still need your leadership." The dragon god's gaze became gentle. He looked at his son in front of him and said, "Garamandes, you are injured." Garamandes shook his head vigorously. He said, "No, I am fine. Father, you will be fine too. Demanteti, Nianbing, quickly save my father." As he spoke, 2 rays of golden light had already enveloped the dragon god's body. Under the effect of the strongest light magic, the terrifying wounds on the dragon god's body no longer bled. The dragon god shook his head. He no longer had the strength to stand up. Looking at the dragon king, Nianbing, and the others in front of him, he sighed softly and said, "Don't waste your energy. We dragons are different from humans. We have strong magic resistance and extremely high defense. My internal organs are all damaged. Now, it is my dragon soul that is supporting me that I can still talk to you. You should all understand that healing magic has no effect on me." No. Absolutely not. Father, Nianbing's magic is very strong. He will definitely be able to cure you. Garamandes roared frantically. Although Nianbing's mental strength was now very weak, he was still doing his best to perform the water and light magic, and the life orb on his chest was also releasing the aura of life without hesitation. However, he soon discovered that his healing magic had no effect on the dragon god, just as the dragon god had said. The vitality of the dragon god was already very strong, but now the vitality of the dragon god was rapidly depleting. No matter how he replenished it, it was impossible to slow down the speed of depleting. The dragon god was like a bag full of holes that could no longer be repaired. Although Nianbing's magic was strong, he was not a god. He knew that even if Cao was here now, he could not save the dragon god's life. Well, Garamandes, don't make things difficult for Nianbing anymore. He is also very weak now. Stop the treatment. Before I die completely, I have a few words to say to you and Kagarosis. Tears flowed down from Garamandes's face. At that time, when his father valued Kagarosis, he was not sad. When his most beloved Demanteti chose Kagarosis, he did not shed tears. The position of the dragon god that should have been inherited by him was also given to Kagarosis. He was still himself, as if he was a man of iron who could not cry. But now, he was crying sadly in front of his father who was about to die. His legs went soft. Garamandes knelt in front of the dragon god, holding his father's head tightly, and tears poured out. Kagarosis also walked to the front of the dragon god. Although his expression was calm, his deep black eyes were full of sadness. The dragon god had given him too much. In his heart, the elder he respected the most was the dragon god in front of him. It was the dragon god who taught him how to become an excellent dragon, how to become the pride of his people. He knew that he would never be able to repay the dragon god's kindness. Tears also flowed down from the cold and dark eyes of the Dragon King. Looking at the huge golden-red eyes of the Dragon God, he said solemnly, "Lord Dragon God, if you have any orders, just say it." The Dragon God laughed. At this time he actually laughed. "You know, Kagorosis, when I chose you, I felt it was a little risky. I'm not talking about choosing you to be the successor of the Dragon God, but the moment when I let you return to being a dragon. After all, your hell-black dragons have done so many wrong things. But now, I can proudly say it in front of my people. My choice was not wrong. After I die, the dragons will be handed over to you. I believe that under your leadership, our dragons will be more prosperous. After I led the warriors of our clan to this continent, the women and children of our clan have also set off. Under my orders, they will bypass the battlefield and meet up with you from the rear. You need to find a suitable place to settle down our clan and let us dragons live in a suitable environment. Kagorosis, I'll leave this to you." "Lord Dragon God, Kagorosis's voice choked, and he couldn't say what was in his heart. The Dragon God said, "Well, you are all ready? In order to be the successor of my throne, you must be strong in front of our people. Their fate is in your hands. Believe me and believe in yourself, you must be a qualified Dragon God. Oh, by the way, there is also your child Oscar. Kaka is very good, and his achievements will inevitably be above yours in the future. I'm glad that I didn't punish him at that time. My opinion remains unchanged. When you are old, he will inherit the throne of the Dragon God." "Grandpa Dragon God, I'm here." Oscar transformed into his human form and flew in front of the Dragon God and knelt down beside his father. During the days when Yen Bing was in the land of God, Oscar had been learning from the Dragon God. The Dragon God gave him a lot of things to let him grow faster. Seeing the Dragon God become like this, his heart was full of sadness and reluctance, but he knew that there was no possibility of the Dragon God being cured because his soul was connected to Yen Bing. The Dragon God looked at Oscar with a smile and said, "Cultivate well. At that time, the destruction of your body was not a bad thing. It facilitated you and Yen Bing to be together. Yen Bing is the most outstanding human I've ever seen. I'm sure he won't bury you if you become his companion. One day in the future, you will be as outstanding as your father and become the leader of our dragons." Kagorosis wiped the tears on his face, stood up, pressed his right hand on his forehead, and solemnly said, "I, the Dark Dragon King Kagorosis, swear in the name of the Dragon God that for the prosperity of the dragons, I will contribute all my strength until the end of my life." The Dragon God also said in a solemn voice, "I, in the name of the former Dragon God, grant you the honor of inheriting the throne of the Dragon God. The ancestors will be with you, and the dragons will always look at the light under your leadership." A faint golden-red radiance lit up on the Dragon God's forehead, and a small golden crystal floated out and fell between Kagorosis's eyebrows. The faint golden radiance instantly became intense, and when the radiance converged, the golden crystal had already disappeared. Kagorosis's body exuded the aura of a ruler. After inheriting the Dragon God's crystal soul, he had now become a true Dragon God. The Dragon God who released the golden crystal looked even weaker. After taking a deep look at Kagorosis, his gaze fell on his crying son. "Garamandes, you have to learn from Kagorosis. I can see that you have now become a real man, a man of our dragons. Our fire dragons will still be led by you in the future. Child, can you tell me, do you still hate me?" Garamandes took a deep look at his father and said, "No, I don't blame you anymore. When I really grew up, I already understood your difficulties. You didn't make a mistake in choosing Kagorosis. He is more suitable to be the successor of the Dragon God than I am. He is stronger than me in all aspects. It's just that I have always been unwilling to admit it due to my own dignity." "Father, The Dragon God interrupted him. "Well, I understand what you mean. In fact, to me, you and Kagorosis are both my children. In terms of talent, you are not much worse than him. But do you know why I have always been better to Kagorosis than to you? Garamandes shook his head blankly. The dragon god smiled and said, That's because you still have me, your father, while Kagorosis is an orphan. You should know that the hell-black dragons are reclusive by nature. If I don't care about him a little more and don't treat him as my own child, how can he grow up on the right path? I really owe you. But in my heart, you are still the most important. Looking at you now, I am really gratified. You are indeed my son. I am also proud of you. Garamandes' tears that had just stopped flowed down again. He threw himself on the dragon god and burst into tears. Yes, he had always treated the dragon god as his own father. Just as the dragon god had said, ever since he returned to the dragons, the dragon god had treated him much better than his own son. How could he forget this kindness? The dragon god looked at his two children gently and sighed deeply. Actually, I knew that today's outcome would happen, but it couldn't be avoided. The she-world is indeed too strong. If I didn't accompany him, I'm afraid that today's outcome would have been decided. Therefore I had to do this. My children, I hope you can understand me. For the dragons and for the Yangon mainland, my sacrifice is worth it. Nian Bing, come here.